unruly 33-year-old man is behind bars after lashing out at law enforcement. At around 4 a.m. on Wednesday the 19th of July, authorities responded to the Waffle House in Miramar Beach, Florida, about a man causing a disturbance in the restaurant. Witnesses said the man was frantically running around, stating he had been shot and acting erratically. When deputies arrived, they identified the individual as Victor Williams. It was immediately clear to deputies that Victor had not been shot and appeared to be under the influence of drugs. When they tried to place Victor into custody, he struck a deputy and bit another on the leg. Even when handcuffed, Victor continued to be highly resistant and continued to fight with deputies, positioning his body in such a way that he could not be placed into the patrol car. After numerous attempts to place Victor into the back of the vehicle, a drive stun was used to gain compliance. However, deputies say the attempt was ineffective. During repeated attempts to get Victor to comply, he struck another deputy in the face with his knee before he was finally taken into custody. Victor is charged with battery on a law enforcement officer, resisting with violence and disorderly conduct, and he's held at the Walton County Jail. The investigation into the matter continues. A 20-year-old man is behind bars for attempted murder after stabbing the wrong person. At 9:34 p.m. on the 18th of July, authorities responded to the 200 block of South Hunt Street in Greentown, Indiana, on a report of a man with a stab wound to his neck in the alley. First responders arrived at the scene, and they found 48-year-old Ryan Cummins with a laceration to his neck, along with a bystander providing aid. Ryan said that he was riding his bicycle in the alley when he was approached by a white male wearing a red and black hoodie. He said that the suspect approached him and pepper sprayed him in the face. He said that the two of them began to fight, and he believed that he struck the suspect at least once in self-defense. At some point during the altercation, Ryan said he was stabbed in the neck and fell to the ground. He said that as he was being stabbed, the suspect stated that he was going to kill him. While on the ground, Ryan said that the suspect stood over him and asked for his name. When he told the suspect his name was Ryan, the suspect said wrong guy before fleeing on foot. Ryan said that he never met the suspect before and he was airlifted to hospital. Police said that his current condition is unknown. Law enforcement canvassed the area looking for the suspect in evidence, as area hospitals were put on notice of the suspect's description. At around 10:25 p.m, a Community Howard Regional Health Police officer advised that a person matching the description of the suspect had arrived at the emergency department of the hospital. Police responded to the hospital and identified the suspect as 20-year-old Justin Crow Jr. of Jonesboro, Tennessee. Using a photograph, Justin was positively identified as a suspect in this case by witnesses, although he wasn't wearing the clothes in the description officers were initially given. While interviewed at the hospital, detectives learned that Justin was staying with his grandparents in the 400 block of East Grant Street, about a quarter of a mile from the scene of the stabbing. A search of that residence resulted in the collection of evidence relating to the crime. During an interview with Justin, his account of the incident changed multiple times. However, at the conclusion of the interview, Justin said that Ryan called him a name and that it triggered him. He then admitted to stabbing Ryan with a box knife and threatened to kill him because he was just done with people. Justin was arrested and charged with attempted murder, and he's held at the Howard County Jail without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 18-year-old Jasmine Paez of Miami, Florida is behind bars for trying to hire a hitman using a parody website to kill a 3-year-old son. On Tuesday the 18th of July, Jasmine used a false name while filling out a form on Rent a Hitman website. She said she wanted to have the boy taken far, far away and possibly be killed as soon as possible, and she said she was willing to pay $3,000. The woman listed wanting to get something done once and for all as the reason for hiring a hitman. Police said she provided an address where the boy lives with his grandmother, a recent photo of him and a phone number when she made contact with the website. A man who runs the website contacted Miami-Dade police, and detectives tracked down Jasmine using an IP address and phone number provided. Jasmine was arrested on the evening of Tuesday the 18th of July, when she confessed to wanting to put a hit on a child in retaliation towards her ex-boyfriend. Her ex reportedly broke up with her because she was a mother, and Jasmine told police that the man told her to get rid of her son. After consenting to have her cell phone searched, a text was discovered by detectives where she told her ex it was being taken care of, regarding the hit on her son. Jasmine's been charged with soliciting murder in the first degree, as well as unlawful use of a communication device. She was held at the Miami-Dade County Jail, but was released on Thursday the 20th of July after posting a $15,000 bond, on the condition she has no contact with her son. The child is safely in the care of the grandparent. The investigation into the matter continues. A fast food employee has been arrested after allegedly serving customers fries from the trash. On Sunday the 9th of July, authorities responded to the Burger King restaurant at 508 North Duncan Bypass in Union, South Carolina, after receiving a call about a disturbance. When officers arrived at the scene, they heard two women arguing with staff, making threats and screaming profanities. One of the officers asked the women to calm down, but they continued to be loud and boisterous. An officer then arrested the women on disorderly conduct charges. During the investigation, authorities learned that on the day of the disturbance, the assistant manager of the restaurant, 39-year-old Jamie Major, took fries that a customer had thrown in a trash can and added them to a container where freshly cooked fries were placed on top. She then put a mix of the new fries and the fries from the trash can and served it to customers. On Monday the 17th of July, Jamie was taken into custody and charged with malicious tampering with food. She was held at the Union County Detention Center, but has since been released after posting a $20,000 bond. If convicted, Jamie faces up to 20 years in prison. Authorities are investigating after a convenience store owner was fatally shot during a robbery. At around 2 a.m. on Wednesday the 19th of July, authorities responded to a BP gas station located at 2155 Flat Shoals Road, in Decatur, Georgia, on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found a man shot to death inside the store. The DeKalb County Medical Examiner's Office identified the victim as 24-year-old Rahil Sarani. Authorities said that Rahil was shot and killed at the store during an armed robbery. According to a witness, Rahil was arranging merchandise outside the store when three people pulled up and shot him. The witness said the individuals went into the store and stole money from the cash register and then left, never saying a word. Investigators are reviewing surveillance footage at the store and are hoping to quickly identify the people responsible. No arrests have been made to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. 79-year-old Paul Edward Marty is behind bars after fatally beating his 77-year-old wife Jean Harriet. At 10:36 a.m. on Monday the 17th of July, authorities responded to a residence along 428th Street in the Big Pine Lake area of Perham, Minnesota, for a report of a possible murder. Investigators said that Paul told his daughter that he killed his wife. He said he bashed her head into the floor and then went to bed, and when he woke up the next morning he realized she was dead. Detectives received information that Paul had 3 guns in the house and that he was intoxicated. When multiple agencies, including the Ottertail County SWAT team, arrived, Paul told them he will shoot at them and that they'll have to kill him. Authorities assisted Paul's daughter in negotiations with him to surrender. During negotiations, Paul said that he did not want to be a burden, and he claimed to have taken a large bottle of opiates. He also described how Jean's face was black and blue and that he does not want to go to jail. Later in the negotiations, he stated that he cannot forgive himself and remembers banging her around and that he probably killed her. One investigator spoke with Paul's daughter. She said that Paul remembers getting into a fight with his wife on the night of Saturday the 15th of July, and she ended up on the ground. He said that he slammed her head into the granite floor a few times, and when he woke up, he found her laying naked and full of blood. At around 3 p.m. on Monday the 17th of July, Paul surrendered and was taken into custody. He had dry blood on his hands and feet. Officers on scene recovered a handgun with dry blood on it, which was found in a wastebasket near pill bottles. The medical examiner's office determined that Jean's cause of death to be a gunshot wound to her head and multiple blunt force trauma injuries to her head, and her death was ruled a homicide. Paul's been charged with second-degree murder and is held at the Ottertail County Jail on a $1.5 million bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 32-year-old Abel Hidraga is accused of fatally shooting 40-year-old Daniel Boschel during a dispute. At around 6:30 a.m. on Monday the 17th of July, authorities responded to the 500 block of Greenfield Drive in Lacey, Lakeview, Texas, on report of an unresponsive man sitting in a chair on the porch of his home. When officers arrived, they found Daniel slumped over dead with a gunshot wound to his forehead. Through interviewing witnesses and reviewing surveillance footage at the residence, officers were able to determine that Abel and Daniel's ex-girlfriend, who is Abel's current girlfriend, were at the residence when the shooting happened at around 1:30 a.m. Investigators located Abel and his girlfriend at a residence in the 500 block of Whispering Avenue, which is about 500 feet from the home where Daniel's body was found. The woman reported she and Abel were drinking alcohol on the porch with Daniel when Daniel retrieved 3 firearms from inside the residence and showed them to her and Abel. She told police Daniel asked her to shoot him, which she refused. She said she never touched the guns, but Daniel eventually picked up one of the firearms. She told police that after turning away, She heard a gunshot and turned around to see Daniel bleeding from his forehead. During Abel's interview with police, he told investigators he began feeling uneasy when Daniel brought out the guns, feeling worried that Daniel might shoot him. He said that Daniel stood up from his chair while holding a pistol, which startled him and made him think that Daniel might start being aggressive toward him. Abel said that he attempted to wrestle the gun from Daniel, and during the struggle it went off, shooting Daniel in the forehead. However, police found Daniel sitting in a chair with a partially burnt cigarette in his hand, and he did not appear to have been shot following a struggle. Abel told investigators he disposed of the weapon in the Tarbikani Creek and Riesel, and showed investigators where it was. At 4:30 p.m. that day, Abel was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, and remains held at the McLennan County Detention Facility on a $500,000 bond. Abel's girlfriend has not been named or charged with the crime, as the investigation into the matter continues. Police are investigating after a woman was fatally shot and a man injured during a shooting early Monday morning. At 1:26 a.m. on the 17th of July, authorities responded to 802 Bragg Boulevard in Fayetteville, North Carolina on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a young woman deceased with a gunshot wound in the parking lot of the Valero gas station. The woman was identified as Danielle Claire Golcher. Police said that a man walked into a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries from the shooting. Investigators said that this was not a random attack. Authorities have not named any suspects or a motive in the shooting, as the investigation into the matter continues. 75-year-old Ralph Pope Jr. is behind bars for fatally stabbing 58-year-old Wanda Anderson. At 11:24 p.m. on Sunday the 16th of July, authorities responded to the Cedar Crest apartment complex in the 2800 block of Laodicea Drive in Raleigh, North Carolina on report of a stabbing. When officers arrived, they found Wanda with severe stab wounds, who was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators said that Ralph stabbed Wanda during an altercation. Ralph was taken into custody and charged with murder. Police have not said how the two may have known each other, or released any further details on the case, as the investigation into the matter continues. A couple are behind bars after their 2-year-old daughter was found alone, naked and drugged up outside their neighbour's apartment. The parents, 21-year-old Hannah Mackenzie Strazheim and 23-year-old Tyler Steele, have been charged with chemical endangerment and 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance. The couple also face possession of drug paraphernalia charges. At around 8 p.m. on Saturday the 15th of July, authorities responded to the Atrium Apartments complex in Daphne, Alabama, after a resident found the child near the front door laying on the ground dehydrated and overheated. Captain Reginald Ardis with the Daphne police said, "The parents and the individual who found the child all live in the same complex. I'm not sure how many feet away or how many apartments away the child had travelled, but we believe she had been alone and unattended, completely unclothed for up to 20 minutes, he said. Medics arrived and transported the girl to a hospital, where she tested positive for cocaine. Authorities then executed a search warrant of the couple's apartment and discovered a large quantity of drugs inside. Officers found over 100 OxyContin pills, drug paraphernalia and cocaine. Officers also found 3 semi-automatic handguns. The drugs and weapons were all held within the child's reach, some of which were in the girl's bedroom. That same night, the couple were arrested and transported to the Baldwin County Correction Center, where they each held on a $35,500 bond. Alabama's Department of Human Resources is working with the girl's extended family to create a custody plan for the child. The investigation into the matter continues. A 27-year-old woman is behind bars after stabbing her ex-boyfriend. The assault occurred at around 4 a.m. on Tuesday the 18th of July, along North Lexington Avenue in Nashville, North Carolina, near the Interstate 240 overpass. Officers found the unnamed victim in nearby Pack Square Park, and he was transported to Mission Hospital with a non-life-threatening stab wound to his stomach. Police said the suspect, Kelly June Dealing of Fort Worth, Texas, was later found about half a mile away from the crime scene, in the area of Patton Avenue and North Ann Street, and she was arrested. The knife used in the stabbing was also recovered. Kelly has been charged with assault with a deadly weapon inflicting serious injury, and she's held at the Buncombe County Detention Facility without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A 28-year-old woman was arrested this week after giving birth to a baby that tested positive for drugs earlier this year. Police in Dothan, Alabama said that Natalie Petra Reeves gave birth to a baby in April. and testing confirmed the presence of an illegal substance. A warrant for Natalie's arrest was issued. On the evening of Monday the 17th of July, Natalie was taken into custody and charged with 1 count of chemical endangerment of a child. She was released the following morning on a $15,000 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 23-year-old Michael Bellis is behind bars for fatally beating his 51-year-old mother Elena Vayner. At around 1 a.m. on Monday the 17th of July, authorities responded to a residence at 1975 Middlesex Street in Lowell, Massachusetts for a 911 call reporting a woman had been assaulted and was struggling to breathe. When first responders arrived, they found Elena deceased inside the apartment with swelling and bruising around her face, including her black right eye. She was pale and cold to touch with pooling of blood to her back, as well as bruising to her left hand and red marks to her neck. Authorities said that Michael was the one who called law enforcement to report his mother had been severely beaten. He reported that his mother was in distress and barely breathing, and she looked like she had been in a fight. Michael, at University of Massachusetts Lowell, told police his mother was breathing moments earlier, which was inconsistent with her apparent condition. Investigators said it appeared as though she was in a physical struggle that resulted in her death. Officers also observed injuries on Michael's hand, and he told officers that he fell on the floor. Authorities said that Elena, who was from Reading, was visiting Michael at his condo over the weekend. During the visit at some point, a physical altercation occurred that resulted in Elena being severely beaten and suffering multiple injuries to her head and neck. Officials arrested Michael on charges of assault and battery on a family member and assault and battery causing serious bodily injury. He remains held without bail. An autopsy is pending to determine the victim's cause and manner of death, and additional charges against Michael are anticipated in the coming days. The investigation into the matter continues. 20-year-old Joshua Morley is behind bars after severely beating his girlfriend's 5-year-old twin boys and placing one of them in a washing machine. The abuse occurred on Wednesday the 12th of July, while the children were in Joshua's care at an apartment in Louisville, Kentucky. That same day, police were called to Norton Children's Hospital after the twin boys were brought in with extreme injuries. They were admitted to the emergency room with blunt force trauma to their genitals and foreheads. One of the victims also had blunt force trauma to the abdomen, as well as an acute liver injury. While interviewed separately, both boys told officers that Joshua held them up by their hair and punched them several times in their foreheads and private areas. One of the victims told police he was put in the laundry by Joshua. He said it was dark and he couldn't breathe. The other victim told officers he saw Joshua put his brother in the washer and close the lid. He also said he heard the machine making noises. At around 8:30 p.m. on Thursday the 13th of July, Joshua was arrested at his Louisville home and he was charged with 3 counts of first-degree criminal abuse. The following morning, he was arraigned in court where a not guilty plea was entered on his behalf. Joshua has been held at the Louisville Metropolitan Department of Corrections with his bond set at $50,000. He was ordered to have no contact with the twins or their mother. The next court appearance is scheduled for the 24th of July. The investigation into the matter continues. A 34-year-old woman and a 38-year-old boyfriend are behind bars on multiple charges of neglect of a child and false imprisonment. On Thursday the 13th of July, authorities received a call from someone who informed them that 2 naked juveniles, estimated to be 13 years old and 9 years old, were walking around outside a home at 128 South 71st Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with blood on them. The children reportedly had bruises on their bodies and red marks on their thighs. The caller reportedly noticed a woman yanked a boy into the house. Their children were later determined to be 7 and 9 years old. Officers arrived at the scene and learned that the woman, Katie Kosh, violently dragged the child back to the house. As officers got closer to the house, they heard what sounded like a quieter cry or whimper. Katie then exited the home through a side door. The responding officers spoke with Katie, who appeared to be flustered and anxious. She said her father died and her kids broke a window. The officers went inside and noted it looked like a terrible hoarding situation, with trash all over the place and feces smeared all over the walls of one of the bedrooms. While inside, Katie was putting a diaper on another child, who had red marks all over his body. Additional officers arrived, and Katie told them, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so afraid." Officers found a mound of trash and garbage outside the children's bedroom, which also smelled like urine and feces. A latch was placed on the outside of the door to lock them in. Katie acknowledged that the home is not habitable. Katie said she lived at the home with her boyfriend Joel Mankey, who refers to himself as their stepfather. When officers spoke with Joel, He said he boarded up the windows in the kids' room to keep the children from bothering the nosy neighbour. He added that he locked the door to prevent them from walking around the house at night. Over the 3 years that Katie had been living with Joel, she never took the kids to the doctor or enrolled them in school. She said that she homeschooled them, but admitted that she doesn't have proper curriculum for them. A witness told police he saw one of the children sitting outside naked and said he looked like a caveman. Several other witnesses said they'd never seen the children before. Medics took the children to a hospital, where their hair had to be cut because it's full of matted feces. Katie said that's okay, because the kids needed a haircut. Katie and Joel are held at the Milwaukee County Jail. Katie's bond's been set at $30,000, whereas Joel's has been set at $6,500. The investigation into the matter continues. 23-year-old William Carpenter is behind bars after attacking his father with a hatchet. The incident occurred early Saturday morning on the 15th of July at a home on Quail Hollow Boulevard in Pensacola, Florida. Authorities said that William and his father got into an argument that escalated, and he attacked the older man with a hatchet. The father was taken to hospital with lacerations on his arm. William was arrested and charged with attempted homicide and criminal mischief. He's held at the Escambia County Jail without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 2 men have been arrested after a man and a woman were killed and 4 others injured in a shooting. At 12:16 a.m. on Thursday the 13th of July, authorities responded to the parking lot in the Airway Plaza area of bars and restaurants located at 1160 Airway Boulevard in East El Paso, Texas, on reports of shots fired. Police said that a fight started in Ditsy Duck Bar which spilled into the parking lot. 2 men each pulled out their handguns and began firing into the crowd, and 6 people were shot. The men then fled the scene in their car. 26-year-old James Nicholson died at the scene, and 5 individuals were transported to local hospitals with serious injuries. 27-year-old Alexa Ratana later succumbed to injuries at the hospital. The 4 others who were injured ranged in age from 25 to 30 years old. Investigators interviewed multiple witnesses at the scene and reviewed surveillance video of the incident and identified 20-year-old Andrew James Williams and 22-year-old Aaron John as the shooters. Investigators obtained a description of the vehicle Andrew and Aaron fled in, and with the assistance of the Fort Bliss Military Police, the suspects were stopped at the Constitution Gate about 5 miles away. Both men are charged with capital murder and are each held on a $2.5 million bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A 21-year-old man is behind bars after stabbing his grandmother. At just before 6:30 p.m. on Saturday the 15th of July, authorities responded to a home in Ockley, Indiana on report of domestic violence. When deputies arrived at the residence, they found a 58-year-old woman in a critical condition, suffering from multiple stab wounds. Medics transported her to a Lafayette hospital, and she was admitted to the intensive care unit for surgery. A witness told deputies that Dustin Earl Roy Lindsay attacked his grandmother during an altercation before fleeing the scene. Later that evening, deputies located Dustin and arrested him without incident. He's charged with aggravated battery, domestic battery and attempted murder as he's held at the Carroll County Jail. It's unclear what the altercation was about, and an update on the woman's condition has not been provided. The investigation into the matter continues. 64-year-old Richard Hansen is behind bars for fatally beating his 54-year-old wife Nancy Hansen at their home. At 8:21 p.m. on Saturday the 15th of July, authorities responded to a home at 66 Brookline Street in Newton, Massachusetts, after they received 2 911 calls of an assault. One was from a child in the house and the other was from one of Nancy's friends. The child told police his father was hitting his mother with a baseball bat. The child was downstairs with his 2 young brothers while the couple were fighting upstairs. The friend who called 911 said she was on the phone with Nancy when the fight started. She heard the phone drop and then several loud bangs could be heard in the background, as well as the children screaming, "Stop Dad, you're killing her." When police arrived at the property, they found Richard in the driveway with blood splattered on his body and clothes. He told officers that she was cheating on me, and he couldn't believe he did that. One of the boys who was crying led police to one of their bedrooms where they found Nancy unconscious with a head wound. A baseball bat and a weighted bar with blood on it were found near her. She was rushed to Brigham and Women's Hospital where she died, and Richard was arrested. Police interviewed the son who called 911, and he told them that his parents were always fighting and that it had gotten worse this week. An autopsy showed Nancy had fractured right and left forearms, several fractured ribs, blunt force injuries to a skull, defensive wounds on the hands and fingers, and a bruised torso. 2 days earlier, Nancy called police and obtained a restraining order against Richard. The Department of Children and Families has custody of the children who live in the home. During his arraignment in Newton District Court on Monday the 17th of July, Richard pleaded not guilty to murder and several other assault and battery charges relating to his wife's beating death. He is ordered held without bail and is due to appear back in court on the 16th of August. The investigation into the matter continues. "24-year-old Ryan Tyler Watts is behind bars for attempting to drown a female relative last month. At 9:44 p.m. on the 5th of June, authorities responded to a home along Royal Troon Drive in Rainbow City, Alabama, after receiving a 911 call of domestic violence. Officers responded to the scene and learnt that Ryan broke into a family member's home and tried to drown the woman before fleeing the scene. Rainbow City police were later notified by the Atala police that they located Ryan and his vehicle at Johnson's Giant Foods, roughly 5 miles away from his relative's house. Authorities said that Ryan drove his vehicle through the wall of the grocery store and he was still inside the vehicle when they arrived. He was hospitalised from the incident and warrants for attempted murder were obtained on the 6th of June. After being released from hospital on Friday the 14th of July, he was booked into the Etowah County Detention Centre, where he's been held on a $100,000 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A 44-year-old woman has been jailed after fatally stabbing a 61-year-old mother. At around 11:45 a.m. on Saturday the 15th of July, authorities responded to a home in the 100 block of Wingbish Place in Danville, Virginia for a welfare check. When officers arrived, they found Marie Boynton unresponsive with multiple stab wounds. She was pronounced dead at the scene, and Marie's daughter Ebony Home was identified as a suspect. Ebony was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and is held at the Danville City Jail without bond. The motive of the attack is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. 22-year-old Christian Hooks has been charged with DUI manslaughter after hitting a pedestrian and fleeing the scene. Authorities said that at 12:42 a.m. on Saturday the 15th of July, Christian was driving at a high rate of speed on Missouri Avenue, near Druid Road in Clearwater, Florida, when he hit 34-year-old Joshua Maxson. Callers reported seeing a man lying in the roadway soon after the crash. Upon arriving at the scene, officers found Joshua dead in the roadway and identified Christian as the suspect. Investigators tracked Christian down about 20 minutes later. He was drunk and failed field sobriety tests. Breath samples of .217 and .223 were obtained. Florida's legal blood alcohol limit is .8, so he was almost 3 times over the legal limit. Christian was arrested and is held at the Pinellas County Jail. The investigation into the matter continues. Police are investigating after a man was fatally shot and his girlfriend was injured during a shooting. At 7:39 p.m. on Thursday the 13th of July, authorities responded to the 1700 block of South State Street in Champaign, Illinois and reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found 20-year-old Jaheim Law in a critical condition with a gunshot wound to his head and a 21-year-old female victim with a gunshot wound to her leg. They were both taken to a local hospital. At 9:59 that night, Jaheim died from his injuries. The woman is recovering from non-life-threatening injuries. Police said their initial investigation showed 2 large groups had gathered and engaged in a physical altercation in a parking lot, and during the altercation, someone pulled a gun and fired, striking Jaheim and the female victim. The 2 groups then fled the area, but several people were detained for questioning by arriving officers. Latrice Jones, Jaheim's aunt, said that Jaheim wasn't involved in the altercation, but was working at the time and was being protective of his girlfriend. She said that he went outside to the parking lot to ask his girlfriend to come back inside Taco Bell when they were both shot. Latrice said that Jaheim was a hard-working man trying to take care of his 2 babies. Officers continue to interview witnesses and review surveillance footage of the area. No arrests have been made to date as the investigation into the matter continues. 27-year-old Lewis Thomas is behind bars for fatally shooting his 27-year-old girlfriend Latoria Mitchell. Investigators said that just before midnight on Friday the 14th of July, Latoria was shot outside a home at 542 South 6th Street in Nashville, Tennessee. Prior to the shooting, Latoria had gotten into an argument with Lewis at a nightclub. Lewis pushed Latoria, and Lewis was escorted out of the club. Later that night at 11:40 p.m, Police said that Lewis drove to Latoria's apartment when another altercation occurred. Latoria then retreated outside, and Lewis followed, shooting her multiple times. He continued to shoot her as she lay on the pavement before fleeing the scene. Lewis was later found and arrested on James Robertson Parkway. In an interview, he implicated himself in the shooting and admitted to disposing of a pistol in the woods. Lewis is charged with criminal homicide and evidence tampering and is held without bond. "51-year-old Samuel Montoya is behind bars after attacking his wife Alma Acevedos with a knife at an ice cream shop. At around 11:45 a.m. on Thursday the 13th of July, authorities responded to the Tutti Frutti Bar ice cream shop at 27 Daisy Street South in Soap Lake, Washington on reports of a domestic dispute. When first responders arrived, they found Alma on the front sidewalk bleeding from the front of the neck and bystanders giving first aid. She told police that her husband had cut her throat with a knife before he fled the scene. Medics transported her by air ambulance to the Confluence Health Central Washington Hospital in Wenatchee, where she's recovering. Alma told investigators that she and Samuel's relationship was on and off over the last couple of months, and she had been seeing another man, and Samuel did not like that. Prior to the attack, Samuel texted her a picture of a knife. A little later, Samuel came through the door of the business she owns while she was working. She and Samuel began arguing about the man she was seeing, and the argument escalated with Samuel suddenly stabbing Alma in the neck, and she fell to the ground. Samuel stood over her and said, "If I can't have you, no one can," and stabbed her in the neck again. Alma fought back and got cuts on the hands from the knife, but she managed to get Samuel off her and run out the door. A few hours after the incident, Samuel turned himself in at the Ephrata Police Department. He's charged with attempted first-degree murder, and is held at the Grant County Jail on a $1 million bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A 38-year-old man is behind bars for fatally beating his 43-year-old wife. At around 4:45 a.m. on Wednesday the 28th of June, authorities responded to a home on Highway 74 in Gonzales, Louisiana, and found Sonia Escalante Backer in a bed dead from blunt force trauma. After obtaining sufficient evidence, investigators identified the victim's husband, Joseph Lee Fogel, as the primary suspect. Joseph called police that morning to report his wife's death. In an interview, Joseph told detectives he left his home to get breakfast, and when he returned, he found his wife dead. Investigators believe that Joseph beat his wife to death with a weapon, but have not disclosed what that weapon was. On Thursday the 13th of July, Joseph was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and is held at the Ascension Parish Jail. Joseph was previously convicted of aggravated kidnapping in Weatherford, Texas. In June of 2007, he asked a woman he knew for a ride when he handcuffed her and held her at knife point. He was released from Texas State Prison and put on parole in June of 2015, and he finished his parole in June of 2022. Authorities said that Joseph and Sonia had been in a relationship for 3 years after meeting through a dating app and had been married for about a year. Joseph was unemployed while Sonia worked at a local construction company. Authorities have not provided a motive in the killing, but said the couple had recently been experiencing financial hardship. The investigation into the matter continues. A 31-year-old woman kidnapped a newborn from the neonatal ICU and stabbed multiple hospital staff as she escaped. At around 10:30 p.m. on Thursday the 13th of July, authorities responded to a report of a stabbing at Palms West Hospital in Loxahatchee, Florida. Kendra Green took a 3-day infant off a ventilator at the neonatal ICU, and hospital employees tried to stop her as she was leaving with her child. Kendra pulled out a knife and stabbed 3 hospital staff members. The infant was being treated at the hospital for undeveloped lungs. Kendra violently removed the infant's breathing device and other life-supporting instruments. The first victim begged Kendra to stop, but she pushed her and said, "Fuck you, bitch." Another victim saw Kendra carrying something close to her body in one arm and a large serrated kitchen knife in the other hand as she ran towards the emergency room exit. When the employee tried to stop Kendra, Kendra cut the employee's forearm. A separate witness tried to block Kendra and noticed the newborn hidden underneath her shirt. Kendra then slashed the witness in the hand. When another victim tried to grab the baby, Kendra cut her in the side of the neck. The employees were treated for non-life-threatening injuries and were discharged. Kendra drove away from the hospital and dropped the baby off with a family member. She then left before crashing a vehicle and fleeing on foot. After a short pursuit, deputies apprehended her. After being taken into custody, deputies learnt that Kendra suffers from schizophrenia. Palm Beach County Fire Rescue visited the family member and safely brought the infant back to the hospital where the child remains in a stable condition. Kendra is charged with cruelty toward a child, 2 counts of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, battery and resisting an officer. She remains held at the Palm Beach County Jail on a $302,000 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 30-year-old Billy Myers and 32-year-old Christina Myers are behind bars in connection to the death of their 5-year-old daughter. On Monday, the 24th of July, deputies from the Randolph County Sheriff's Office responded to a home at 5232 Needham's Trail in Seagrove, North Carolina, after receiving a service call to complete a welfare check and found a 5-year-old girl deceased. The Randolph County Criminal Investigations Division responded to the scene, located evidence and identified Billy and Christina as the primary suspects in the child's death. They were arrested and charged with felony abuse of a child. They're held at the Randolph County Detention Center on a $250,000 secure bond. Authorities did not specify what the evidence was. However, a video of where the child lived depicted squalid conditions, with rooms piled with waste. Michael Anderson, the uncle of the girl, described the 5-year-old as lovable and that she laughed a lot. He said his niece required constant care because of medical conditions, saying she had cerebral palsy and seizures. He said she had a tube in her stomach to feed her to take her medicine that way, and she had leg braces. He also said the Department of Social Services has stopped by the house 3 different times in the last couple of years. He claims it was because the 5-year-old had so many health issues. Michael said their parents love their 3 children and would never abuse them. "Hope they get to come home because I know they love all 3 of their kids," he said. In 2019, Christina faced a misdemeanor child abuse charge, but the district attorney later dropped that charge against her. Michael said the other 2 children lived in the home and are now staying with an aunt. The investigation into the matter continues. Authorities are investigating after a 38-year-old man was fatally shot at a party over the weekend. At around 2:10 a.m. on Sunday the 23rd of July, authorities responded to a property in the 400 block of North Roosevelt Avenue in Sun River Terrace, Illinois, on reports of shots fired and subsequently a person shot at a large gathering. When deputies arrived, they observed numerous vehicles fleeing the area and about 100 bystanders and partygoers remaining on scene while others frantically rendered aid to the gunshot victim. The victim, identified as 38-year-old Weston Penniman, later died from his injuries. Kankakee County Sheriff Mike Downey said, "Our thoughts and prayers to the friends and family of Mr. Penniman. I encourage anyone with information to contact our investigators in hopes that those responsible for his death can be brought to justice." Authorities continue to collect evidence and speak with witnesses as the investigation into the matter continues. An 83-year-old former reverend has been arrested for allegedly killing an 8-year-old girl in 1975 while she was on her way to his Bible camp. At around 9:30 a.m. on the 15th of August 1975, Gretchen Harrington was walking alone from her home at 27 Lawrence Road in Broomall, Pennsylvania, to the Trinity Chapel of the Christian Reformed Church just over a quarter of a mile down the road for summer Bible camp, when the suspect David Zanstra allegedly drove up to her in his green station wagon. David was a reverend at the camp and a friend of the Harrington family. David was also the father of one of Gretchen's friends, so the 8-year-old got in his car. At 11:23 a.m. that day, Gretchen was reported missing. On the 14th of October 1975, her skeletal remains were discovered about 5 miles from her home in Ridley Creek State Park. A witness reportedly told police they saw Gretchen get in the 2-tone car, but David allegedly denied seeing Gretchen that day. David allegedly gave authorities specific descriptions of Gretchen's clothes, even though he had denied seeing her that day. On the 2nd of January 2023, investigators spoke with a woman who was David's daughter's best friend when they were children. The woman said she often had sleepovers at David's house, and one time she allegedly woke up to David groping her groin area. A friend told David's daughter, and she said her father did that sometimes. Her friend also said someone in her class was nearly kidnapped twice. She reportedly wrote in a diary that she thought David was a suspect. Investigators tracked David down to his home in Marietta, Georgia and spoke with him on the 17th of July 2023. David denied seeing Gretchen the day of her disappearance, but then backtracked after learning about what his daughter's friend alleged. David admitted to driving a green station wagon that day and took Gretchen to a wooded area. He told her to take off her clothes, and when she said no, he struck her in the head with his fist. She began bleeding and he believed she was dead, so he attempted to cover up her body and left the area. David was arrested in Georgia and is charged with multiple murder charges, kidnapping of a minor and possession of an instrument of crime. He remains held at the Cobb County Jail without bail. He's fighting extradition back to Pennsylvania. The investigation into the matter continues. Authorities are investigating after a 19-year-old man died after being shot outside a restaurant. At just before 12:30 a.m. on Friday the 21st of July, authorities responded to a walk-in person shot at Ascension St. Vincent Hospital on 86th Street in Indianapolis, Indiana. When officers arrived, they found Nuruddin Mokhtar Mohammadou in a critical condition. At around 1 a.m, Nuruddin succumbed to his injuries. Investigators learned that Nuruddin was shot in the parking lot of an Arby's restaurant at 7002 Georgetown Road, where investigators found at least a dozen shell casings. The restaurant was closed at the time of the shooting, but workers still cleaning up heard the shots and ran to the back of the kitchen. No bullets appeared to have hit the building. Investigators said that after Nuruddin was shot, a friend rushed him to the hospital. No arrests have been made, and police have not identified any suspects as the investigation into the matter continues. A 21-year-old pregnant woman was fatally shot, and 4 others injured after a fight broke out at a park. At 1:14 a.m. on Saturday the 22nd of July, authorities responded to Margaret Jenkins Park at 10700 Rosehaven Drive in Houston, Texas, after ShotSpotter technology detected 3 dozen shots fired at that location. Upon arriving at the scene, investigators learned that a fight broke out between several groups of people at the park, where an altercation led to some taking out firearms and shooting. The victim, identified as Autumn Lachey Valiant, was with her friends and family at a birthday party cookout when the fight broke out. She got caught up in the crossfire while trying to leave the area. Autumn, who was pronounced dead at the scene, was 5 months pregnant at the time. Her unborn child also did not survive the shooting. Autumn's mother, Ebony Valiant, said that my daughter came telling me, pulling me, "Mama, let's get away. Let's get away." I looked back. My baby was down on the ground, gone, she said. Ebony said, "I just lost my baby. She was in school trying to get a job, trying to become something, and she's gone now." Autumn's family said that our first time seeing the baby will be when we bury her. We will never get the chance to see her as a mother. Authorities said that 4 other people were struck by gunfire. 3 of the people struck were transported to a local hospital, 2 of whom were the suspected shooters, and are reportedly in a stable condition. 1 person suffered a graze wound and did not go to hospital. The 2 shooting suspects have been detained at the hospital. Police are investigating to see if there are any additional suspects. No charges have been announced to date. A homicide investigation is underway after a 26-year-old man was fatally shot at a party over the weekend. At around 3 a.m. on Saturday the 22nd of July, authorities responded to a building along the 300 block of West Hampton Street in Anderson, South Carolina on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a man in a critical condition with gunshot wounds. Medics treated him at the scene and rushed him to a local hospital, where he succumbed to his injuries at 3:35 a.m. A coroner's office identified the victim as 26-year-old Derek Lamar Wiley of Anderson. Authorities said it appears that Derek was attending a party with a large gathering of people and was involved in an altercation resulting in him being shot multiple times. His death has been ruled a homicide. No arrests or suspects have been named to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. 27-year-old Anton Arnold is behind bars after fatally beating 47-year-old John McCall. On Thursday the 13th of July, authorities were called to the Prisma Health Greenville Memorial Hospital in South Carolina after John was admitted with multiple blunt force blows to his head and face. Upon further investigation, authorities learned that Anton committed the assault on the victim at a home about 4 miles away on Probst Drive in Powdersville. Anton was located, interviewed and later arrested, and initially charged with assault and battery of a high and aggravated nature, while John remained hospitalized. Authorities said that Anton admitted to beating John with a metal baseball bat. Days later, John passed away from his injuries. After an autopsy was completed, Anton's charge was upgraded to murder. He's been held without bond at the Anderson County Detention Center. The relationship between the men and the motive in the attack is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. 33-year-old Rod Shad Balzahar Smith is behind bars in connection to a double homicide outside of a restaurant. At just before 4 a.m. on Saturday the 22nd of July, authorities responded to the parking lot of the Waffle House at 188 South Dixie Boulevard in Radcliffe, Kentucky, and reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found 2 deceased men with gunshot wounds. The victims were identified as 18-year-old Shane Estrada and 30-year-old Carlos Bello. Investigators said that Rodshed was captured on video and audio surveillance talking to someone about taking a gun from one of the victims. Rodshed then shot multiple rounds at a vehicle leaving the Waffle House, with the 2 victims inside, fatally wounding them. On the afternoon of Monday the 24th of July, Rodshed was arrested on charges of murder and robbery. Investigators said that Rodshed freely admitted to his involvement in the shooting. He's been held at the Hardin County Detention Center on a $500,000 bond. Police said that no other injuries were reported and are still working hard on the investigation. It's unclear at this time whether there'll be any additional arrests in connection to the shooting. The investigation into the matter continues. 4 people behind bars for attempting to kidnap a man. On Thursday the 20th of July, Davidson County deputies were called to an attempted kidnapping and shooting at 185 Whisper Drive in Denton, North Carolina. After deputies arrived at the scene, they found the victim with a gunshot wound to his leg. The man said that 4 friends came to his property and ordered him into the trunk of their car at gunpoint. He said that when he tried running away, he was shot in the leg. The man identified the suspects as Jeremy Davis, Kevin Hewlin, Rebecca Mansell and Sheena Ambrose. The suspects had all fled the scene before deputies arrived. The victim was taken to Rowan Regional Hospital, where he was treated and released. Detectives soon located the suspect's vehicle parked about 12 miles away from the scene of the kidnapping attempt at 8917 Woodsterry Road, a known address for one of the suspects. Detectives quickly gained a search warrant for the residence and conducted the search with the help of the Randolph County Sheriff's Office Special Emergency Response Team. The suspects soon barricaded themselves inside the home. Following several orders over a loudspeaker for everyone to exit the house, chemicals were used to force the suspects outside. The 4 people quickly came out and were all identified as the kidnapping suspects. All 4 were taken into custody without further incident and charged with assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, inflicting serious bodily injury, and second-degree kidnapping. Deputies retrieved multiple firearms from the home believed to be used in the shooting and kidnapping attempt. The suspects are held at the Davidson County Jail, each on a $150,000 secure bond. Police have identified a man wanted in the murder of 21-year-old university student Ayana Morgan, who was fatally shot over the weekend. At 10:09 p.m. on Sunday the 23rd of July, police responded to the Muse Apartments at 1799 Russellville Road in Bowling Green, Kentucky for an assault in progress. When officers arrived, they found a man trying to help Ayana, who was in a critical condition suffering from 2 gunshot wounds. Police said Ayana was shot in a left collarbone with an exit wound under her left breast and a gunshot wound to her left leg. The responding officer stated Ayana was saying "God forgive me" and she couldn't breathe. She was transported to a local hospital and then airlifted to Nashville Trauma Center, where she died early the next morning. Authorities said they believe Ayana was involved in a brief struggle prior to being shot. Investigators said that the man who was trying to help Ayana was a food delivery driver. He told police that he and his girlfriend saw a Hispanic man coming around the corner of the building and doing a gun motion with his hand. Additionally, he told police he saw a navy blue Jeep Patriot was speeding through the parking lot that almost hit him. The pair told police that the driver looked like a black woman wearing glasses in the mid-20s with dreads. However, they stated the Jeep was driving too fast to see anyone else inside. Police said the man did not hear any gunshots in the area when he first arrived at the apartment complex. He told police that he drove slowly through the parking lot and was flagged down by an unknown man stating something was wrong. He found Ayana laying on the ground, shot and covered in blood. He rendered aid until officers and medics arrived at the scene. Police have just announced that they have issued a warrant for the arrest of Malik Jones in Ayana's murder. The Bowling Green Police Department says he should be considered armed and dangerous. The investigation into the matter continues. A 53-year-old man is behind bars after pointing a gun at a police officer. On the night of Friday the 21st of July, authorities responded to a residence along Long Hunters Trail in Glasgow, Kentucky in reference to a complaint. When police arrived, Sergeant Wesley Hicks of the Glasgow Police Department rang the doorbell of the residence, and a female individual answered the door with a man, identified as Michael Stuckert, standing behind her with a loaded firearm pointed at the officer. Wesley was able to draw his service weapon and began immediately giving verbal commands to Michael to drop his weapon. Michael complied and Wesley arrested him without further incident. No injuries were reported. Michael was charged with wanton endangerment, second degree of a police officer, and he's held at the Barron County Detention Center on a $5,000 cash bond. Caleb Venson is behind bars for fatally shooting 3 women, including his ex, and for wounding his infant son that she was holding. At around 6:30 a.m. on Monday the 24th of July, authorities responded to a report of a triple killing at Wood Creek Apartments in East Brady Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and found 3 women dead on the floor inside an apartment. A baby boy had been shot and was also found next to one of the women. The 11-month-old infant underwent surgery and is expected to survive. Police said detectives learned Caleb got into the apartment by shooting at a sliding glass door. A 13-year-old boy was inside the apartment and hid in a back bedroom when he heard the gunshots, adding that Caleb forced the boy out of his bedroom and was then very remorseful of his actions. The boy managed to escape out of the apartment window and called for help. Police identified the deceased women as 20-year-old Anaway McKay, Caleb's ex-girlfriend 38-year-old Ashley Atwell, and 19-year-old Sarah Gonzalez. Police said Caleb initially ran away from the scene, but felt guilty and turned himself in at around 8 a.m. He was arrested for 3 counts of first-degree murder, shooting with intent to kill, and first-degree burglary. Caleb has been held at the Tulsa County Jail without bond. Ashley and Caleb split up more than a year ago, and Caleb moved into the apartment across the street from Ashley. 9 months ago, Ashley filed a protective order against Caleb after he choked her, hit her, and attempted to place a gun in her mouth. The protective order, however, was later dismissed. The investigation into the matter continues. Authorities are searching for a man after he fatally shot another man during a physical altercation. At 12:24 a.m. on Friday the 21st of July, authorities responded to a shooting at the 1100 block of East 17th Street in Winston-Salem, North Carolina on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found the victim, 26-year-old Devontae Atkins, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Despite attempting life-saving measures, he died at the scene. Detectives discovered that Devontae was in a fight with an unnamed 22-year-old man when he was shot. Police said there was an exchange of gunfire when this suspect was also shot. The suspect then fled the scene. The suspect's injuries were non-life-threatening, and police said he was treated and released from a local hospital. Detectives are working on locating the suspect. The investigation into the matter continues. A woman is wanted by police for fatally stabbing a roommate at a restaurant earlier this month during a dispute over missing money. At around 4:20 p.m. on the 8th of July, authorities responded to Keith and Son Soul Food Cafe at 5948 Martin Luther King Jr. Highway in St. Pleasant, Maryland, on a reported stabbing. When officers arrived, they discovered 62-year-old Mervyn Daniel unresponsive inside the restaurant bathroom, suffering from a stab wound. The victim was taken to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead. Authorities said that 21-year-old Rakaya Poston and 37-year-old Jesse Cully, who both lived with Mervyn, got into an argument with him at the restaurant where he worked part-time. Mervyn's co-workers then separated them. Rakaya and Jesse left and went to the AutoZone store across the road, but returned minutes later. Rakaya then confronted Mervyn in the kitchen area over $10 that she said was missing and yelled, "I will kill everyone in this store." Investigators said that Rakaya then grabbed a bread knife and stabbed Mervyn, who stumbled into the bathroom floor before collapsing. Jesse helped Rakaya escape through the back door of the restaurant. Police found a bloody knife hidden on the shelf in the kitchen. Mervyn's friend Skip Fletcher said that he worked hard every day, came on the weekend to help his family run the restaurant, he said. Police have arrested Jesse and charged him with accessory after the fact. Authorities are still searching for Rakaya, who's wanted for first-degree murder and related charges. The investigation into the matter continues. 31-year-old Eugene McKeithen is behind bars for fatally shooting his girlfriend, 34-year-old Veronica Smart. At 1:08 a.m. on Thursday the 20th of July, authorities responded to the intersection of Marseille and Minerva Streets in Detroit, Michigan on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Veronica laying face down and unresponsive in the middle of the street with a gunshot wound to her head. Medics arrived and pronounced her dead at the scene. Investigators said that while driving near that intersection, Eugene pulled a handgun and shot his girlfriend Veronica, fatally wounding her. Eugene then pulled her body from the vehicle, leaving her in the roadway before fleeing the scene. Eugene was arrested later that day. He's charged with first-degree murder, felony in possession of a firearm, and 2 felony firearm violations. He's held at the Wayne County Jail without bond. The motive of the attack is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. 2 men are behind bars in connection to the death of a man. At just before 10:30 a.m. on Friday the 21st of July, Authorities responded to the 400 block of South Drury Street in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and found a body in the wooded area. Investigators later identified the victim as 28-year-old Dylan Lewis. Officials have not disclosed the victim's cause of death. Police initially identified 28-year-old Troy Driscoll as a suspect in the case. Later that evening at around 8:20 p.m, investigators executed a search warrant at just over 2 miles away near 100 West Matthews Avenue, located Troy and took him into custody. He was booked into the Payne County Jail on charges of first-degree murder, third-degree burglary, and possession of drug paraphernalia. After conducting interviews with witnesses, police identified a second suspect, 31-year-old John Helfrich. At just after 2:30 a.m. on the 22nd of July, John was arrested on a charge of first-degree murder and is held at the Payne County Jail. The three men lived in Stillwater. However, police have not stated how the men knew each other, the events leading up to Dylan's death, or a motive in the attack. The investigation into the matter continues. A 33-year-old man is behind bars for assaulting a 59-year-old woman and breaking her nose because she did not say good morning to him as he walked by. At around 9 a.m. on Thursday the 13th of July, authorities responded to Balsam Street in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts, on a report of a woman attacked by a stranger. When officers arrived, they found a beaten woman who told them that while she was watering her front yard, a man later identified as Ian Atkinson walked by her and then cursed her for not saying good morning to him. Suddenly fearful because of the aggressive nature of Ian's remark, the woman started video recording Ian on her cell phone. Ian, who entered a black Mercedes parked nearby, then left the car and advanced on the woman and began punching her. Home security surveillance video obtained by police shows Ian punched the victim at least 7 times in the head. The video then shows Ian return to the Mercedes, put it in reverse and swerve towards the woman before driving away. The woman, who was bleeding profusely from her nose, managed to record the car's license plate and provided it to police. She told investigators that she'd noticed Ian wearing a GPS tracking device. The woman was transported to County Hospital, where it was determined that she suffered a fractured nose and hemorrhaging to her left eye. She told police she managed to bite Ian on the shoulder during the attack. Police ran the license plate number to locate Ian at a home in Lucerne Street and found a second Mercedes registered in his name. Officers compared Ian's license photo to the man captured by the victim's phone video and determined them to be the same person. The victim later identified Ian as her attacker in the photo lineup. Police also determined that Ian was wearing a GPS tracker under the conditions of a separate assault case. Information from the tracker placed Ian directly at the Balsam Street location at the time of the assault. Ian was taken into custody. Ian argued that he was defending himself because the woman was biting him. He said that the woman was the aggressor and sprayed him with a garden hose, but the video showed none of that, and there was no water on the ground. Ian was arrested and charged with assault and battery causing serious bodily injury and assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. At a court hearing on Tuesday the 25th of July, a judge found Ian to be dangerous and ordered him to remain behind bars for 120 days. He's due back in court in September. The investigation into the matter continues. 34-year-old Tabitha Frank is behind bars after a 2-year-old son fell from the 3rd floor apartment window and later died. At around 3:30 p.m. on Saturday the 22nd of July, authorities responded to an apartment complex at the intersection of Capitol and Row Avenues in Hartford, Connecticut after receiving a call about a child who fell from a window. The toddler was unresponsive and suffering from severe injuries when officers and paramedics arrived. He was transported to a local hospital, where he later died. Hartford Police Lieutenant Aaron Boysford said that the boy's very bad fall appears to be a case of neglect, and there were 4 other children at the residence, all under the age of 12. He described the home's living condition as very deplorable. It was also noted that the air in the apartment was heavy with an overwhelming foul odour. Lieutenant Boysford confirmed that the toddler fell after a screen came off. The children were reportedly home alone when the incident occurred. Tabitha was arrested and charged with 10 counts of risk of injury to a child. She was released after posting a $100,000 bond. Tabitha will likely face other charges that align with the boy's death. She's scheduled to appear in court on the 3rd of August. The investigation into the matter continues. A 24-year-old woman has been charged with murder after one of her 5-month-old twin sons died of starvation on Christmas, while the other was close to dying. Tamir Tomlin was initially arrested on the 28th of December 2022 on 2 counts of abuse of a child with serious physical injury. She was additionally charged with murder on the 24th of July after further police investigation. On the 25th of December 2022, Tamir called 911 and said her infant son, Amir Wright, was not breathing. She said she had recently fed both of the twins before putting them down for a nap, and that she fell asleep herself. She said that she woke up a couple of hours later. Her blankets were soiled and she looked at one of the twins and he was not breathing, so she called 911. Medics rushed to Tamir's apartment at 4011 McIntosh Street in Greensboro, North Carolina, and transported the twins to a local hospital, where Amir was pronounced dead. Investigators said they found minimal food at Tamir's residence, and there was no fresh formula and the milk was curdled. An autopsy determined that the boy died of malnutrition and starvation, and the boy's death was determined to be a homicide. Amir's twin reportedly looked like skin and bones, and the boy's joints were visible, and he appeared to be very malnourished. Doctors noted that the twin was also near death due to malnutrition. Tamir moved from Ohio to North Carolina and gave birth to the twins 2 days later. The boys reportedly weighed 4.5 pounds when they were born and had traces of THC in their system. They weighed 5 pounds when they were 5 months old. Tamir admitted to authorities that she had interactions with Child Protective Services in the past. She's been held at the Guilford County Jail without bond. A 50-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting a 55-year-old man during an altercation. At around 9:30 a.m. on Thursday the 27th of July, authorities responded to a Shell gas station at McCall and Hasty Roads in Laurinburg, North Carolina, on reports of a disturbance and then shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a deceased man in the driver's seat of a black Honda Pilot parked next to the car wash with a gunshot wound. The victim was identified as 55-year-old Clifton Thomas of Bennettsville. During the investigation, authorities discovered that Clifton and another man got into an argument, and then witnesses heard gunshots. Witnesses said the suspect then fled the scene in a light blue Hyundai. Later that day, police said that the suspect, identified as 50-year-old Robert McLeod of Laurinburg, turned himself in. Robert is charged with first-degree murder and is currently being held at the Scotland County Detention Centre. The investigation into the matter continues. Authorities have determined that a 5-year-old boy was high on cocaine when he fatally shot his 1-year-old brother, who had marijuana in his system. At 2:52 p.m. on Monday the 24th of July, the parents, 27-year-old Deontay Johnson and 24-year-old Shatir Welch, were arrested during a traffic stop at LaPorta, Indiana, and faced multiple neglect and drug charges, including neglect resulting in death. In addition, Deontay faces an obstructing justice charge. At 3:02 p.m. on the 28th of March, authorities responded to an apartment at 504 Westchester Lane in Lafayette, Indiana, on reports of a child not breathing. When officers arrived, they found a deceased 1-year-old boy named Isaiah Johnson with a gunshot wound to his head. Upon further investigation, authorities discovered that the baby's 5-year-old brother found a handgun inside the family's Romney Meadows apartment and shot him. Following the death, toxicology results showed the toddler tested positive for marijuana, while his older brother had cocaine in his system. Deontay told police he's alone with the 2 boys and that he was asleep on the couch when he heard a loud boom, and he ran upstairs and found his baby son unresponsive in his bedroom. At the time, Deontay denied his child had been shot and repeatedly denied having a gun in the apartment, and initially claimed Isaiah had been injured by falling or an injury caused by his older son. Deontay eventually told officers that Shatir owns a handgun and that she usually keeps the gun on the shelving unit near the front door to the apartment. He said he last saw the gun a few days prior to the incident, and it was locked in the safe under the bed. Upon further probing, Deontay said he heard a noise which woke him up, and he saw his older son downstairs asking for a bowl of cereal. Deontay said he prepared a bowl of cereal before going to check on his younger son. He said he went to the upstairs bedroom when he found Isaiah deceased. He said that he then called Shatir. While officers were investigating the incident, Shatir arrived home and told police she left the apartment hours before the incident. She said she missed a call from Deontay, then received a message which stated that Isaiah was dead. She said that she then called 911 and rushed to the apartment. She said she kept a handgun under a bed in a lockbox, but admitted to having lost one of the 2 sets of keys. She went on to say that a 5-year-old would not know what the keys belonged to. Officers searching the apartment, however, said they found a gun and the keys to a Nissan in the top dresser drawer of a bedroom. They also found drug paraphernalia and 93 fentanyl pills, all within reach of the 5-year-old boy. Investigators also said that surveillance cameras from the apartment complex captured Deontay leaving his apartment and placing a bag into a car after his son died. When police searched the car, they found 400 grams of marijuana stashed inside. Authorities said that electronic devices and social media records from Deontay contain messages about selling drugs. Both parents remain in custody and await extradition to Lafayette. Deontay's trial is scheduled for the 28th of November, and Shatir's is due to begin on the 12th of December. A 65-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting his 25-year-old son during a fight over 25 cents. At around 6:30 p.m. on Saturday the 22nd of July, authorities responded to a home on the 2800 block of Warner Street in Madison, Wisconsin, after John Shively called 911 and admitted to shooting his son Zachary Shively. When officers arrived at the residence, they found John with blood on his hands and clothes and confirmed his son was dead. John told investigators that he and his son were arguing over finances when the argument turned physical. John then used Zachary's firearm and shot him in the chest. Authorities learnt that Zachary asked John for cash, though John said that he didn't have any. He eventually gave Zachary $2, though his son said he needed $2.50. Zachary had some change on him, but he needed 25 cents more to get to the amount. John told detectives that he's behind on his mortgage payments and other taxes, so he did not want to give Zachary money. He said his son often asked him for money. During their argument, he told investigators that his son hit him and pushed him into the corner, where he landed in a chair and bumped his head on the wall. John said that he tried to walk upstairs, but Zachary pulled him back down. John then picked up the pistol, which was on one of the bottom steps. He admitted to police, "I can't tell you how much I regret that I picked it up," thinking that he'll finally back down, which he didn't do, so I shot him point blank. Officers reportedly found the gun on the floor pointing to Zachary's body. John is charged with first-degree intentional homicide and use of a dangerous weapon. He's held at the Dane County Jail and his bond's been set at $300,000. The investigation into the matter continues. A 78-year-old man is behind bars after fatally shooting his 59-year-old girlfriend during a dispute. At around 3:30 p.m. on Thursday the 27th of July, authorities responded to a trailer park along the 100 block of Northridge Circle in Troy, Alabama on reports of someone shot. When officers arrived, they found a deceased woman on the ground in the front yard of the home with a gunshot wound. The woman was identified as Essie Meadows, and the gun used in the shooting was found at the scene. Upon further investigation, authorities identified Larvie Woods as a suspect. Officers located him nearby in the same mobile home park, and he was taken into custody. Authorities said that the suspect and the victim were dating, and the motive is believed to be domestic related. Investigators said that in the lead up to the shooting, Larvie had been arrested for multiple incidents of misdemeanor domestic violence. Larvie has been charged with murder, and is held at the Pike County Jail without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A 35-year-old theft suspect wanted by police is behind bars after she demanded police shoot her while using her daughter as a human shield. At 8:58 p.m. on Thursday the 20th of July, Tanisha Selena Henry led police on a 25-mile chase of speeds of up to 100 miles per hour in the Houston, Texas area. During the pursuit, she made multiple unsafe lane changes along the service roads of Interstate 45 and then travelled the wrong way along Airport Boulevard. The pursuit ended in the parking lot of the shopping strip along the 14,400 block of Cullen Boulevard after Tanisha ran out of gas. Deputies performed a felony stop of the vehicle, but Tanisha refused to comply and pulled a 14-year-old daughter from the vehicle. Tanisha then placed her crying daughter in a chokehold and placed her in front of her as a human shield. Harris County Precinct 8 Constable's Office Deputy A. Peters, who responded to assist Webster Police in pursuit of a theft suspect wanted by Bel Air Police, said, "At that point I 100% believed that we had a hostage situation," she said. "I distinctly remember her at times saying, 'Shoot, shoot me, shoot us.' To put your family member, not to mention your daughter, right in front of that potential danger is just kind of crazy to me," she said. Deputy Peters managed to get behind Tanisha and use a taser to subdue her. A third person believed to be a romantic partner of Tanisha was found in the suspect's vehicle. He was placed in the patrol car, and Tanisha was apprehended. Deputies conducted a search of the vehicle and located 22 pieces of identifying information including Texas driver's licenses, Texas security license, debit cards and credit cards, social security cards and health insurance cards. Further investigation revealed the identifying items were taken without consent, and Tanisha had attempted to use the debit and credit cards. Tanisha was charged with evading arrest, child endangerment and fraud. She remains held at the Harris County Jail on a $20,000 bond. Tanisha's daughter remains in the care of a grandparent. The investigation into the matter continues. A 47-year-old man has been hospitalized and is facing charges after getting stuck in a chimney while trying to enter a home of someone who has a court order against him. At around 1 a.m. on Friday the 28th of July, police and fire departments went to a home at 5041 North 39th Drive in Phoenix, Arizona, because Irvin Ortiz Guzman attempted to enter the residence from the roof. The family who lives in the house said they know Irvin. Police said that Irvin was technically not allowed to be in the residence due to a court order. Phoenix Fire Captain Kim Ragsdale said that the firefighters were able to monitor the atmosphere around him at all times. They were able to have contact with him at all times, speak to the gentleman and provide water for him. Captain Ragsdale said that the chimney flues are relatively small and are not capable of having a human go in and out of them. Technical rescue teams arrived at the home and were able to secure Irvin with a harness and rope system, preventing him from slipping down the chimney any further. After breaking a wall from the inside, Irvin was successfully lifted out of the chimney. It took roughly 2 hours to free the man. After the rescue, Irvin was taken to a hospital for treatment and is expected to be okay. Irvin is facing multiple charges that include criminal trespassing and an order of protection violation. The investigation into the matter continues. A 31-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting his girlfriend's 30-year-old ex-boyfriend after the woman was assaulted by her ex. At around 2 p.m. on Thursday, the 27th of July, authorities responded to the intersection of 3rd and Earl Streets in the Dayton's Bluff neighborhood of St. Paul, Minnesota on a reported shooting. When officers arrived, they found Jermaine Baker lying in the street, deceased from multiple gunshot wounds. Witnesses said that Lazarus Burns was standing at the bus stop with the woman when Jermaine got off the bus, then ran up to the man and the woman at the bus stop. Jermaine knocked the woman to the ground, grabbed her hair and was yelling and smashing her face in. When Jermaine stopped hitting the woman, Lazarus fired multiple shots at him as he ran away, and he collapsed in the street. Police found him with 2 gunshot wounds to the torso, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. The woman told police that she had dated Jermaine on and off for about 4 years, and had started dating Lazarus a few days ago. She said that Jermaine frequently assaulted her, but never reported it, and that she heard Lazarus tell him to chill before she heard the gunshots. The woman was left with a swollen face and multiple bumps on her head. Lazarus told police that he did not know Jermaine, and that he heard him say "that's my bitch bro" before he attacked the woman. Lazarus told the officers that he witnessed abuse before in his life, and that when he saw Jermaine attack his girlfriend he blacked out and shot him. Lazarus is charged with second-degree murder, and is held at the Ramsey County Jail. If convicted, he faces up to 40 years in prison. Authorities are investigating after a 39-year-old woman was fatally shot. At just before midday on the 27th of July, authorities responded to the 6500 block of University Hills Boulevard in the neighborhood of Oak Cliff in Dallas, Texas on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found Beck Alvarado Tamayo dead from a gunshot wound. Investigators have not disclosed the motive or any suspects in the shooting. Friends and family of Beck said that she was a loving and caring mother of 6 children, and that she worked hard and always brought joy to her family. No further details have been provided on the case, as the investigation into the matter continues. 19-year-old Zachary Ramirez is behind bars for fatally shooting 2 people. At around 3:45 a.m. on Thursday, the 27th of July, authorities responded to the 300 block of North Moore Street in Old Town, Wichita, Kansas on a report of 2 people shot. Police said that a street sweeper operator found 20-year-old Josefina Loma Dominguez and 21-year-old Brian Lara Hernandez shot to death in a vehicle in a parking garage in Old Town Square next to the recently closed Regal Warren movie theatre. Police used surveillance cameras and license plate reading technology to identify and lead them to the double homicide suspect. Later that afternoon, Zachary was located a couple miles away and he was arrested after a standoff in nearby Riverside. He is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and criminal discharge of a firearm. He's held at the Sedgwick County Jail without bond. 22-year-old Joel Thomas Ferrer is behind bars for fatally shooting his aunt's boyfriend during a dispute. At 11:11 p.m. on Thursday, the 27th of July, authorities responded to Goldham at Regency Oaks Apartments at 104 Monarch Circle in Casabria, Florida in regards to shots fired. A neighbour rang 911 after hearing gunshots and screaming nearby. When officers arrived, they found 41-year-old David Jackson outside the complex shot multiple times. He was rushed to the Orlando Regional Medical Center, where he underwent emergency surgery, but was pronounced dead at just before midnight. Authorities learned that David and his girlfriend 32-year-old Trisha Ferrer lived together and Trisha's nephew Joel was staying with the couple temporarily. When David and Trish were in the bedroom, they could hear Joel manipulating a firearm in the bathroom. David went to the bathroom to confront Joel for mishandling the handgun. The pair got into a heated argument, and they both went outside where the dispute turned physical. Joel then fired his gun at David at least 8 times, striking him several times before fleeing the scene. At around 10:30 a.m. on Saturday the 29th of July, Joel turned himself into the Seminole County Jail and is charged with second-degree murder. The investigation into the matter continues. A Lowe's employee has recently been fired after trying to stop thieves from stealing merchandise. On the 25th of June, 3 people entered the Rincon, Georgia store along Highway 21 and loaded up a shopping cart with $2,100 worth of items. As the group left without paying, 68-year-old Donna Hansborough grabbed onto the cart being pushed by Takia Berry. Takia then punched Donna in the face 3 times, giving her a swollen black eye. Takia, who was with her uncle Joseph Berry and another man police identified as Jama Lawton, then made off with the goods. Investigators said they were able to arrest Jama, but they're still looking for Takia and Joseph, who remain on the run. Donna ended up being fired from Lowe's for violating the store's policy by attempting to stop the crooks. Donna said that they say that if you see somebody stealing something out the door, do not pursue, do not go out. I lost it, she said. I grabbed the cart. I don't actually remember going out, but I did, and I grabbed the cart that had stolen items in it. The former store employee said she became overwhelmed by instinct, but never thought her employer would let her go. I didn't expect to get terminated, she said. Maybe a reprimand or a suspension. I just got tired of seeing things get out the door. I just lost it. I basically lost all the training, everything they tell you to do. I just lost it, she said. Donna is currently looking for another job. I just can't sit at home. I'm not that type of person, she said. The 68-year-old had worked for the company for 13 years. The investigation into the matter continues. A sex offender who was released from prison cut off his ankle monitor the next day before being found overdosing on drugs. 29-year-old Albert Gardner served a 9.5-year sentence for assaulting a minor before he was paroled and placed on supervised release on the 7th of July. At just before 2 a.m. on Saturday the 8th of July, a parole officer noticed that Albert's GPS tracker had been at a 7-Eleven gas station at 765 South Broad Street in Brooksville, Florida for an unusual amount of time, triggering a search for Albert. When deputies arrived at the convenience store, they found Albert's ankle monitor in a trash can, but there was no sign of Albert. Shortly after finding the tracker, a call came in about an overdose at an apartment less than a mile down the road at 635 West Fort Dade Avenue. Deputies responded to the scene and found that the person overdosing was Albert. His sister said that he had taken an unknown narcotic. Deputies gave Albert some Narcan, reversing the overdose. Albert was transported to Bravura Health, Brooksville by ambulance, where he was medically cleared. Albert was arrested and charged with violating parole and tampering with an electronic monitoring device. He's held at the Hernando County Detention Center without bond. 39-year-old Jacob Scheck is behind bars for the stabbing and beating death of his 72-year-old father, Frederick Scheck. In the early morning hours of Wednesday the 19th of July, authorities responded to a home at 5038 Holiday Road in Minnetonka, Minnesota, after a resident of the home's lower level reported an unresponsive man. When officers arrived, they encountered both the woman who called and Jacob, who was only wearing gym shorts with blood on his hands and right foot. As officers made their way to the kitchen, they said they found Frederick dead on the floor, with multiple blunt force trauma injuries to his face, head and neck, as well as lacerations. Officers at the scene then located a knife in the kitchen sink covered in blood. When the woman was interviewed, she told the investigators that she had seen the 2 men earlier that evening, with Jacob drinking alcohol and giving his father a hard time, while the elder man worked on the pool. The woman then told investigators that she went to bed at around 8:30 p.m. and heard a loud crash on the upper level of the home, which sounded like someone stomping. She said that Frederick's wife called her several times, asking if she heard from either Frederick or Jacob, because they weren't answering their phones. At 1 a.m., the woman said she was woken up by the family dog, which she led outside before going to the home's upper level and finding Jacob asleep on the couch. She asked Jacob where his father was, and shortly after, found Frederick's lifeless body on the kitchen floor. She asked Jacob what happened, to which he replied he needed to die. Jacob told her, "I was going to give him crab legs, and then he just needs to die. And Mum knows he needs to die, and I would have just let Mum handle it." Jacob was then arrested on suspicion of murder and taken into custody. After performing an autopsy, the Hennepin County medical examiner determined Frederick's cause of death was a result of blunt force injuries, including multiple fractures to his skull, face, neck and ribs. He also suffered cuts to his head and neck and had blood in his lungs. Jacob's been held at the Hennepin County Jail on a $1 million bond. If convicted, he could spend up to 40 years in prison. The investigation into the matter continues. A 27-year-old woman is behind bars after a 6-year-old girl with special needs fatally suffocated during a bus ride to school. At 9:04 a.m. on Monday the 17th of July, authorities responded to the Claremont Elementary School in Franklin Township, New Jersey, on reports of an unresponsive child. When first responders arrived, they performed CPR on the 6-year-old victim before transporting her to a local hospital's intensive care unit, where she was pronounced dead. The girl's been identified as Faja Williams. Faja was born with Emanuel syndrome, a rare chromosome disorder that left her unable to speak or walk, but she was still able to make sounds. Authorities learned that on the day of her death, the wheelchair-bound victim rode the bus from her home to attend classes as part of an extended school year. The bus monitor, 27-year-old Amanda DeVilla, secured Faja's wheelchair in the back of the vehicle. On the way, the bus encountered road bumps causing Faja to slump, and her wheelchair's 4-point harness became tied around her neck, blocking her airway. During the incident, Amanda was toward the front of the bus on the phone wearing earbuds, which is a violation of policies and procedures. On Wednesday the 19th of July, Amanda was arrested and charged with second-degree manslaughter and second-degree endangering the welfare of a child. She's held at the Somerset County Jail. The investigation into the matter continues. 46-year-old Rhonda Jewell has been arrested after an infant girl in her care died after being left in a hot car for 5 hours. At around 8 a.m. on Wednesday the 19th of July, Rhonda picked up the 10-month-old girl from the infant's mother's home in North McClenny, Florida to babysit her. Rhonda then drove the infant a couple of miles to another house at 4596 Estate Street in South McClenny to also look after 3 children. While interacting with the other 3 children, she forgot she left the 10-month-old baby inside the SUV parked in the driveway. At around 1 p.m, the child's mother arrived at the home to collect her daughter, when she found her daughter unresponsive in the babyseat of the SUV. At 1:12 p.m, the girl's mother called police to tell them that her child was not breathing, and her lips were blue as she picked her up and relocated her to the garage. Deputies responded to the scene, where they found the infant in the garage laying on the seat of the golf cart, and began performing life-saving measures. Medics arrived at the scene and took the child to Fraser Memorial Hospital, where she was later pronounced dead. Investigators reported that the infant's skin was very hot to touch. The internal temperature of the car reportedly reached 133 degrees Fahrenheit, or 56 degrees Celsius. Rhonda had reportedly been babysitting the 10-month-old girl off and on since June. Rhonda was taken into custody and charged with aggravated manslaughter of a child, and she was booked into the Baker County Jail. She made her first court appearance on the morning of Thursday the 20th of July, and was released on a $25,000 bond, on a condition that she wears a GPS ankle monitor and has no contact with the victim's family. The investigation into the matter continues. A 32-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting a woman. At around 1:15 a.m. on Thursday the 20th of July, authorities responded to a property in the 4000 block of Orange Street in Sefner, Florida after they received a 911 call with rustling noises in the background and no one speaking. Deputies from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office went out to investigate when they found a deceased woman in a car in the driveway of the home with severe upper body trauma. Investigators said that she had been shot through a car window as she arrived home at around 1 a.m. Relatives have identified the victim as Ashley Voss. Upon gathering evidence, they identified Aurelio Diaz as a suspect who had fled the scene. Authorities said that Aurelio and Ashley knew each other, but have not released a motive or details on their relationship. Paris Dubé, the grandmother of one of Ashley's children, said she watched Ring video that showed the man walking up to Ashley's car and shooting her. Paris said that Ashley has 2 young boys who will never see their mum again. For whatever reason you felt like you needed to do that. She was a mum, and she was a really good mum. She loved her boys, and now they're never going to know her, she said. At just after 8:30 p.m. that same day, Aurelio was arrested without incident about a mile away from the victim's home. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Aviation Unit provided surveillance footage from the area of the arrest. Aurelio has been charged with first-degree murder with a firearm, and is held without bail at the Hillsborough County Jail. The motive of the attack is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. Authorities are investigating after a 30-year-old woman was found fatally shot. At 2:19 a.m. on Friday the 28th of July, authorities responded to North Village Shopping Centre at 6877 Dorchester Road in North Charleston, South Carolina on reports of a person shot. When officers arrived, they were flagged down by a crowd in the parking lot outside the Blue Maroon restaurant and found an unresponsive woman on the ground with a gunshot wound, with people attempting CPR on her. Medics arrived and took over performing life-saving measures and transported the woman to Centre Point Emergency Room, where she died at 2:57 a.m. The Charleston County coroner identified the victim as Mayor Jennifer Simmons of Ladson. No arrests have been made to date, and the motive of the attack is unclear as the investigation into the matter continues. A 31-year-old man was fatally shot during an album release party. At around 3:25 a.m. on Saturday the 29th of July, authorities responded to the exquisite event space at 1890 East Parkway in Brooklyn, New York on reports of a shooting. When officers arrived, they found Cameron Hall of East Flatbush with gunshot wounds to his chest. He was rushed to the Brookdale University Hospital in a critical condition, but he could not be saved. Guests were celebrating the release of a Caribbean musician's newest release. The name of the performer has not been disclosed. The celebration included a mini concert. Witnesses told police that Cameron got into an argument with another man. As the dispute escalated, the suspect pulled a gun and fired several shots, hitting Cameron in the upper torso. The music at the club immediately stopped and the gunman fled the scene. Neighbours reported hearing fighting and screaming at the noisy party before police arrived. No arrests have been made to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. A 37-year-old man was fatally shot while trying to break up a fight between two women outside a bar. At around 4:30 a.m. on Saturday the 29th of July, authorities responded to 772 Richmond Terrace in New Brighton, Staten Island, New York on reports of a disturbance. When officers arrived, they found a man identified as Rasheem Flanders on the ground outside the Shakers Bar, in a critical condition with a gunshot wound. First responders rushed Rasheem to Richmond University Medical Center where he was pronounced dead. Authorities learned that Rasheem was leaving the bar when he spotted two women fighting outside. When he intervened to quell the fight, another man came forward and shot him in the head. The two women remained on scene, however the gunman ran away. Detectives are reviewing surveillance footage from the area that can help them identify the gunman. Rasheem lived in Hill Street in Clifton, less than 3 miles away from the shooting scene. Rasheem's mother, Jane Atkins-Moyen, said that he didn't make a habit of hanging out at the bars, and that he could usually be found at home most nights with his two sons aged 9 and 3. Raheem got a tattoo the afternoon prior to the fatal shooting that read the words "Life Eternal." His mother said that was an affirmation of his belief in the afterlife. No arrests have been made to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. Myron Faith Bowie is wanted by police after setting his girlfriend on fire and threatening to kill her family. At 4:47 a.m. on Sunday the 30th of July, authorities responded to a home in the 24,500 block of 86th Place in Kenosha, Wisconsin after a woman rang 911 to say a boyfriend had set her on fire and that she needed help. Medics arrived on scene and transported the victim to a local hospital with severe burns. Authorities learnt that Myron and his girlfriend had an argument, where Myron told his girlfriend that he'll kill her children and her entire family. He then set her on fire and drove away. Myron remains on the run and is wanted for attempted homicide. The investigation into the matter continues. 73-year-old Rodney Lee will spend the rest of his days behind bars after fatally shooting his neighbours 62-year-old Sormatu Gassio and 57-year-old Tibor Laslo for turning off a tap. On Monday the 31st of July 2023, Rodney was sentenced to 30 years in prison after he admitted to the double homicide. The shooting occurred on the night of the 13th of January 2022 at their apartment complex at 10 McDonald Street in Mordialloc, Victoria, Australia. Rodney was retired and had no family or friends, but he took a great interest in gardening and had taken upon himself to care for and nurture the gardens in the common areas of the complex. He would often leave the hose running to water the plants. He had increasing disagreements with several of his neighbours about leaving the tap running in the garden, as well as his concerns about others making too much noise, or accusations that some were making or doing drugs. On the day of the shooting, Rodney returned to the hose to find it had been turned off. Rodney shouted in anger, "If you turn the hose off again, you bastards, I'll fucking kill you." As a result of his outburst, a heated exchange with another neighbour ended when Rodney struck the man with a chair. Later that night, Rodney went to move the garden hose to find it had been turned off again. Sormatu and Tibor were part of a group socialising in the common area at the time. Rodney confronted the group when Sormatu commented to Rodney that water is precious. Rodney then went to his apartment, grabbed a shotgun hidden under his bed, and returned to shoot Sormatu in the upper arm and chest. He then followed Sormatu and neighbours trying to help the injured man into another apartment, where he shot Tibor in the chest. Rodney also fired shots into another apartment. Police responded to the scene, and after a brief standoff, Rodney was arrested. Paramedics arrived and pronounced Saul Maternal dead at the scene. While interviewed by police, Rodney confessed to killing the men, but expressed no regret or remorse in his actions, and perceived himself to be a victim. "I've been provoked a bit, haven't I?" he asked police. A man is behind bars after fatally shooting a woman during a verbal dispute at a Sonic restaurant. At 7:09 p.m. on Friday the 30th of June, authorities responded to 713 North Main Street in Belen, New Mexico, on reports of shots fired in a parking lot of a fast food eatery. When officers arrived, they found a woman with a single gunshot wound to her chest. Officers attempted life-saving measures on the woman, however she died at the scene due to her injuries. The victim was identified as 46-year-old Lisa Swift-Bird. Belen Police Department Chief James Harris said it appears to be an ongoing family issue of some kind. "We believe that the shooter was actually in the line at the Sonic at the time of the shooting." James said the suspect, identified as Donald Lewis, fled the scene after the shooting but returned a short time later. He was arrested and charged with murder, and is held at the Valencia County Detention Center without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. Authorities are investigating after a 19-year-old woman was fatally shot while driving her SUV. At around 4:30 p.m. on Monday the 26th of June, authorities responded to a call of shots fired at 19th and Fall Streets in Niagara Falls, New York, followed by a report of a two-vehicle collision. Investigators said it appears that the female driver of the blue Chevy Avalanche, who was identified as Mackenzie Munt, veered into a red minivan. They said Mackenzie, who was driving down 19th Street, lost control of the vehicle after being shot in the head. She was rushed to the Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center in a critical condition and was stabilized before being transported to the Erie County Medical Center in Buffalo, where she remained on life support. Investigators said the driver of the minivan was treated for minor injuries and was not involved in the shooting. On Thursday the 29th of June, Mackenzie was taken off life support and died a short time later. Authorities have not named any suspects or made any arrests in the shooting and are continuing to investigate the matter. 50-year-old Connie Denise Bethia is behind bars for fatally shooting her husband. At just before midnight on Friday the 30th of June, authorities responded to a home in Methodist Church Road in Marion, South Carolina on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they went inside the premises and found Antonio Bethia in a critical condition, suffering from a gunshot wound. He was taken to the MUSC Marion Emergency Department for medical treatment, but was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Connie was identified as a suspect in the shooting, and she was arrested at the scene. She's charged with murder as well as possession of a weapon during a violent crime, and is held at the Marion County Detention Center. It's unclear what events led up to the shooting, as the investigation into the matter continues. A 25-year-old man has been arrested after the remains of a 56-year-old man who went missing more than 2 weeks ago have been found stuffed in a barrel floating in a South Carolina lake in Cherokee County. At around 1:45 p.m. on Thursday the 29th of June, authorities found a barrel near the shore of Lake Thickety in a small town of Gaffney, and upon opening it, they found human remains which appeared to have been in the container for a number of days. The Cherokee County coroner identified the remains to be that of Jeffrey Supfin, who had a prosthetic right leg, and was reportedly last seen leaving a business in Chesney on the 15th of June. After speaking to a person of interest, investigators determined that Jeffrey died in neighbouring Spartanburg County. Deputies in Cherokee County arrested Eric Sean Fetzer and charged him with destruction, desecration or removal of human remains. Authorities said they expect additional arrests in the near future as the investigation into the matter continues. A 31-year-old man is behind bars after confessing to fatally shooting a 41-year-old man after an argument. At just before 9:30 a.m. on Sunday the 2nd of July, authorities responded to an apartment complex at 2101 West Grand Avenue in Clovis, New Mexico, on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they entered an apartment and found Ruben Morales unresponsive with a gunshot wound to his chest, and his girlfriend 23-year-old Destiny Pahia applying pressure on the wound with a t-shirt. Medics attempted life-saving measures and transported Ruben to Plains Regional Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead. Police learned that the suspect had fled the scene before they arrived. Destiny told investigators that Ruben and a Hispanic man that she did not know entered her apartment arguing amongst themselves. She told police that the yelling got louder, and the unidentified man pulled out a gun and shot Ruben. Destiny told police that she had only seen the shooter one other time with Ruben. As police searched the scene, they found an identification card inside the t-shirt that was used to apply pressure to Ruben's wound. The ID belonged to Jesse Ruers, who was on probation with the Clovis Adult Probation Office for a felony aggravated assault. Officers were able to track Jesse's movements through the GPS ankle monitor he was wearing, and located him less than a mile away at 308 North Reed Street. The officers were able to use the GPS to confirm that Jesse had been at the scene of the shooting. During questioning, he told police the shooting was an accident. He said he had a relationship with Destiny and was at her apartment when Ruben stormed in to confront the couple. Jesse told police that Ruben was cussing him out and started to rush him to fight him. He told police that he grabbed a gun from a nightstand and shot Ruben. Jesse said the gun belonged to Destiny and that he left it at the scene before leaving to go to a friend's house to burn the clothes he was wearing during the shooting. Jesse was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, tampering with evidence and possession of a firearm by a felon. He's held at the Curry County Adult Detention Center without bail. The investigation into the matter continues. A 34-year-old man who was suspected of domestic violence fatally shot a police officer in a hospital before being killed by other officers. The incident occurred at just before 1 a.m. on Monday the 3rd of July at Perry County Memorial Hospital in Tell City, Indiana. Police were called to the scene when a female victim was able to make it to the hospital to be treated for her injuries and told hospital staff that her abuser Sean Hubert was on his way. When Sean arrived inside the hospital, 47-year-old Sergeant Heather Glenn tried to subdue the domestic abuse suspect with an electronic device in order to arrest him, but it was ineffective. During a brief struggle, Sean produced a firearm and shot Heather. Police then returned fire and shot Sean. Heather and Sean were both treated at the scene, however they died from their injuries. Heather spent nearly 20 years with the Tell City Police Department and the Perry County Sheriff's Office. The investigation is ongoing and an autopsy has been scheduled. A 37-year-old woman was recently arrested following the death of a toddler who died early this year from injuries sustained while in her care. The investigation, which began on the 26th of April, revealed that the 15-month-old child suffered a fatal head injury at the child's home, located along the 14,200 block of Parole Way in Beaumont, California. The babysitter, identified as Heather Greenman of Riverside, reported the child had fallen while running and was transported to a local hospital for swelling on the head and bleeding on the brain. The child subsequently died from the injuries at hospital. Authorities were able to identify a second victim, a 2-year-old child who had suffered from serious injuries while in Heather's care, but were not previously reported. The child was also being cared for in the family's home in Beaumont, but was not hospitalized. On Thursday the 29th of June, Heather was taken into custody and booked into the Smith Correctional Facility on suspicion of first-degree murder, willful harm and assault resulting in death. She remains held on a $1 million bond. A man rejected by his former girlfriend bound her with tape and cable ties before burying her alive in an act of revenge. 22-year-old Jaraktot Singh pleaded guilty to the murder of 21-year-old nursing student Jasmine Kaur early this year in February. In sentencing submissions in the South Australian Supreme Court on Wednesday the 5th of July 2023, the court heard that Jaraktot planned the killing because he is unable to get over the breakdown of their relationship. In March of 2021, Jaraktot stalked Jasmine and then abducted her from an aged care workplace in North Plympton, Adelaide. He bound her feet and hands behind her back with a cable tie and tape, and she was put into the back of a car he borrowed from a friend. He then drove over 400 kilometres, or roughly 250 miles, to Moralana Creek in South Australia's Flinders Ranges area. He made superficial cuts to Jasmine's neck, before placing her in a shallow grave and burying her alive with her hands and feet still bound together. The court heard Jasmine had inhaled and swallowed soil. Jaraktot initially denied the killing, claiming that he buried her body after she took her own life, but later pleaded guilty to murder before he was due to stand trial early this year. He was caught on CCTV hours before the murder at Bunnings in Mile End buying gloves, cable ties and a shovel. He faces a mandatory life sentence, with the court to impose a non-parole period next month. A 32-year-old woman is behind bars and is accused of stabbing her elderly grandparents. At 3:44 a.m. on Tuesday the 4th of July, Authorities responded to a home at 702 Burgess Street in Thomasville, North Carolina on reports of a disturbance. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a 73-year-old woman and a disabled 75-year-old man suffering from multiple stab wounds. The victims are reportedly married. The two victims were rushed to Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist in a stable condition. Police identified Kristen Billings, the victim's granddaughter, as the suspect. Authorities said she hid her grandparents' cell phone before fleeing the scene on foot, and she was wanted by police. Police announced that Kristen is homeless and have asked anyone with information of her whereabouts to come forward. On the morning of the 6th of July, a customer at a Sheetz gas station on South Main Street in Archdale, roughly 6 miles away from the crime scene, recognised her at the business. A witness contacted employees who then alerted law enforcement. Archdale officers responded, but Kristen had already left the scene by soliciting a ride from an unwilling person. At 8:44 a.m. that morning, officers located the vehicle and arrested Kristen. Kristen was transported to the Thomasville Police Department for processing. She is charged with 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, inflicting serious bodily injury, and 1 count of interfering with 911 communication. She's held at the Davidson County Jail on a $500,000 bond. Dwayne Lenny lives in the neighbourhood and was familiar with the elderly couple. He said Kristen didn't live at the home, and the couple was just trying to help their granddaughter through a rough time. I think the worst part of it is she didn't just do something to them, it's affected the whole family, he said. Her life is forever altered, and she's forever altered her relationship with everyone in her family because of what she did. The motive in the attack is unclear, as investigation into the matter continues. A 27-year-old man is behind bars after he fatally beat his 56-year-old uncle with a dumbbell weight and hid his body in a closet. At just before 1 p.m. on Tuesday, the 27th of June, authorities responded to a home in the 4400 block of Vegas Valley Drive in Las Vegas, Nevada on report of a physical altercation. When officers arrived, they found an unresponsive man suffering from visible injuries. Medical personnel pronounced the man dead at the scene. Detectives identified the victim's nephew, Jorge Patel, as the primary suspect, alleging he battered the victim earlier in the day in what police described as an unprovoked attack. Prior to the beating death, Jorge's mother got a call from the victim, Leonelle Blandon, claiming her son was acting out of control and throwing chairs and various items at him. Jorge's mother left work to go home to defuse the situation. When she arrived, she found blood on the floor and wall inside the trailer, which Jorge was cleaning up. When she asked her son where Leonelle was, he refused to tell her. The mother then exited the home and called 911. Police arrived and they found blood on the carpet, walls, doors, and on a doorbell that had been ripped out of the wall. Jorge was found on his knees next to a bloody towel with his hands behind his back. An officer asked Jorge what was going on, to which he replied following the rules of engagement. "I'm going to cut the bullshit," he said. "He's in my closet dead." Leonelle's unresponsive body was found in the closet, which had been barricaded with a glass table and other objects. A 10-pound dumbbell weight was found with blood on it, along with drag marks in the bedroom. Leonelle had multiple contusions and abrasions to his head and broken teeth. In an interview with police, Jorge's mother told them that her brother Leonelle was homeless a week or 2 earlier, and she allowed him to live with her temporarily until he got on his feet. She described her brother as very mellow, and said he had recently been hired at a McDonald's on Boulder Highway. When talking about Jorge, she said her son had struggled with drugs since he was 14 years old and sold marijuana in high school. She said her son had a child with a woman he allegedly abused. She also said he has an undisclosed medical condition for which he wasn't taking medication. Jorge's mother agreed to let her son live with her as long as he didn't do anything crazy, break things or get physical with her. She said Jorge had been mentally wasted and talked crazy about the FBI and the government. Jorge told detectives that he acted in self-defense. He said his uncle wasn't actually his uncle, and that he was engaging in genocide and multiple murders with the military and the US president. Jorge said he hit Leonelle, then followed him into a bedroom. The two fought, and at one point Leonelle got out into a hallway, but Jorge caught up with him, took him down and didn't allow him to leave. Jorge said that he then picked up a 10-pound dumbbell weight and hit Leonelle 10 to 15 times in the head and smashed his skull in. After killing his uncle, he then dragged his body to the guest bedroom and stuffed it into a closet before blocking it off with furniture. He said he felt guilty that he had not killed Leonelle sooner to prevent more deaths. Police arrested Jorge and charged him with open murder with a deadly weapon and first-degree kidnapping. He remains held at the Clark County Detention Center without bond. 30-year-old Melissa Rollinson is behind bars for fatally shooting 36-year-old Manuel Manzano. At 6:45 p.m. on Tuesday the 4th of July, authorities responded to a residence at 1204 Breezy Valley Drive in Cordova, Tennessee on a call of a domestic disturbance. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Emmanuel lying on the garage floor with a gunshot wound to his chest. He was transported to Regional 1 Hospital in a critical condition, where he died from his injuries. Detectives identified Melissa as a suspect. Authorities said that minutes before the shooting, Melissa called police to tell them that she and Emmanuel had got into a domestic dispute while driving to the home. The relationship between the victim and the suspect has not been disclosed, and it's unclear what the argument was about. Melissa was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and is held at the Shelby County Jail. The investigation into the matter continues. An 86-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting his 79-year-old wife. At 5:47 p.m. on Tuesday the 4th of July, authorities responded to the Portofino Senior Apartments at 1001 Las Palmas Entrada in Henderson, Nevada on a report of a woman down. When officers arrived, they went inside the home and found a 79-year-old woman suffering from a gunshot wound, and she was transported to a local hospital where she died from her injuries. Investigators said that Jerome Seligman called police and admitted he shot his wife, Susan Toby. Officers recovered a handgun in a holster on the floor of the kitchen. During an interview with police, Jerome said he shot his wife in the shoulder. He told officers, "I'm really depressed. I didn't want to do it, but it got to a point, and if you ever saw her room, you would know why I got that depressed." Jerome was arrested and charged with open murder with a deadly weapon. He's held at the Henderson Detention Center without bail. He's set to appear in court on Monday the 10th of July. In a separate incident in 2018, Jerome was arrested after he aimed a gun at another person. He pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor assault. The case was dismissed and he paid a fine of $1,000. A 22-year-old man is behind bars for severely assaulting 3 children. On Monday the 3rd of July, authorities responded to a home at 628 Main Street in Pope, Mississippi, and found several children suffering from apparent abuse. Deputies from the Panola County Sheriff's Office identified Dalton Melton as a suspect and began searching for him. Information was developed that Dalton was attempting to leave the area, so they located the vehicle he was travelling in and conducted a traffic stop. He was arrested on 2 counts of felony child abuse and 1 count of domestic violence aggravated assault. The children's mother said that Dalton told her that he destroyed the house, but I wouldn't be worried about the house. You need to worry about the kids' faces being busted in. Dalton allegedly kicked a 6-year-old son with steel boots and threw a stove at him. A 14-year-old child reportedly sustained a broken nose and a split lip, while a 3-year-old was hit with a phone. Dalton is on probation from the Mississippi Department of Corrections, and he's currently being held without bond at the Panola County Detention Center. Sheriff Shane Phelps said, "We're going to do everything here in the Sheriff's Office to make sure he'll never hurt another kid again." The investigation into the matter continues. Gregory Cole is behind bars for fatally stabbing his grandmother. At 9:13 a.m. on Monday the 3rd of July, authorities responded to a residence along the 4200 block of Rosewind Circle, Memphis, Tennessee, where a man said he killed his grandmother. Gregory was found sitting in the dining area with a bloody knife on the table, which he told police he used. His grandmother was laying on her back covered in blood in the kitchen area. She died from her injuries, which included numerous stab wounds to the neck and cheek area. Gregory admitted to police that he stabbed his grandmother numerous times and that it was his best option. Gregory was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and is held at the Shelby County Jail. The motive in the attack is unclear as the investigation into the matter continues. On Monday the 3rd of July, 55-year-old Rosa Backer was found guilty of fatally beating her 38-year-old boyfriend with a hammer in 2018. At around 8:15 a.m. on the 17th of December 2018, police and medics responded to a trailer at the back of a property at 277 South Indiana Street in Porterville, California, on a report of a man in need of medical help. When first responders arrived, Rose's 38-year-old boyfriend Jose Magana was transported to a local hospital by ambulance for critical injuries and had to be put on life support. Police said his injuries were consistent with being assaulted with a blunt object. Rosa told officials she got into an argument with her boyfriend the night before. She told them that he left the home and returned early in the morning shirtless with no shoes and had sustained apparent injuries. Investigators said he had clean feet despite being shoeless, and there was no blood or signs of a struggle. Rosa told police she had not driven anywhere during the rainy night or morning. However, officers noticed Rosa's car was warm to touch, indicating that it had been recently driven, and mud tracks from the vehicle were evident. While questioned, Rosa eventually admitted she had kicked the victim, beat him with a hammer, and driven his and her clothes to a dumpster. Nearby video surveillance confirmed the car making multiple trips away from the residence during the call for help. The victim died the next day at a local hospital. At trial, the jury convicted Rosa of first-degree murder with a special circumstance that she inflicted torture, and the special allegation that she used a deadly weapon. Sentencing is scheduled for the 31st of July, where Rosa faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. A 3-year-old boy died early Friday after accidentally shot himself in the head. The Jefferson County Coroner's Office identified the boy as Caden Goldman. At 12:55 a.m. on the 30th of June, authorities responded to a residence in the Forest Hills Village Apartments complex at 2615 Tempest Drive Southwest in Birmingham, Alabama, on a report that a child had been shot. When medics arrived, they found an unresponsive boy inside the premises with a gunshot wound. He was transported to the Children's of Alabama Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 1:55 a.m. Authorities said it appears that the child was in the care of an adult and left the boy in the room by himself for a moment when he got hold of a gun and accidentally shot himself. Birmingham police are investigating. Caden's mother, Adriana Jones, said she is devastated by his death. She described Caden as smart and intelligent. He loved the idea that when he was old enough that he wanted to play soccer, she said. He liked going to the park and had a crazy obsession for dinosaurs. Adriana said Caden was a big brother to his sister Kaylee and an excellent son. He loved fruit and vegetables and he loved to dance. My baby was so independent and he knew exactly what he wanted, Adriana said. He was a good child. No, he was an excellent child. To know him is to love him. He was an amazing person, she said. A 65-year-old woman is behind bars after she fatally stabbed her adult daughter. And just before midnight on Monday the 26th of June, authorities went to 2527 Keene Road in Memphis, Tennessee after receiving a suspicious person call. When officers arrived, they found an unresponsive woman in the driveway covered in blood with multiple stab wounds, and a trail of blood leading from the carport door to the street. Paramedics pronounced the victim 50-year-old Conju Garrett dead at 12:22 a.m. Authorities said the Conju lived with a disability and could not walk. Investigators spoke with Conju's mother Carolyn Garrett and told them that she killed an alien who was trying to take her children. Carolyn's 27-year-old son Kenyatta Townsend told police that she told him that she killed the devil. Police arrested Carolyn, and while speaking with investigators, she said she heard some voices coming from the wall telling her to kill her daughter. Carolyn retrieved a knife from the kitchen and started cutting Conju on the back of her neck and back area. She then dragged her from the street and left her on the curb. Carolyn then cleaned up the blood inside the home and left the towels and sheets she used outside. Carolyn is charged with first-degree murder, and she's held at the Shelby County Jail on a $500,000 bond, and a mental evaluation has been ordered. The investigation into the matter continues. A 36-year-old man is behind bars on suspicion of fatally beating and stabbing his 64-year-old mother. At 9:13 p.m. on Sunday the 11th of June, authorities responded to an apartment at 3725 Northeast 169th Street in North Miami Beach, Florida, where they found Connie Questa deceased. At the scene, officers met with the victim's spouse and the victim's son, Sean Questa, who were outside the home. The victim's husband told officers he discovered his wife unconscious on the bedroom floor with no shirt and her pants lowered to her knees, and she was cold to touch. The spouse called a family friend, who went to the home and also saw Connie Questa's body. A neighbour told police that from around 10 a.m. on the 11th of June until early evening, he heard loud banging and yelling coming from their family's apartment. He said the neighbour alerted the victim's spouse about the noises and called law enforcement. On the 12th of June, police interviewed Sean, noticing visible scratches on his arms and a laceration to his forehead. Sean told officers that he lived with his mother on and off for many years, and he'd been staying with her for the past several weeks. He said that he was with his mother all day on the 11th of June and left sometime between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. to buy food. Police allege, however, that Sean and his mother got into an argument that eventually turned physical. Police said that Sean threw items inside the apartment before severely striking his mother in the head, face and body with multiple blunt objects, including empty wine bottles that were found by the victim's body. Police noted that one of the empty wine bottles had a towel wrapped around the neck, which ultimately resulted in the victim's death. After hitting his mother, Authorities said that Sean used a knife to stab her 4 times in the left temple. Police recovered the knife, which was found in Sean's backpack. The victim's extensive injuries caused her to bleed extensively on the floors of the living room and master bedroom. Sean then tried to clean up the blood with a towel and a rag before he showered and fled the scene. The medical examiner determined that Connie died from internal bleeding resulting from internal organs being lacerated from blunt force trauma. Following his interview with police, Sean reportedly went to his aunt's house. Police said his aunt became concerned about his behaviour and called police, who transported Sean to Citrus Health Facility. On the 16th of June, police said Sean's aunt went to the North Miami Beach Police Department station and told investigators that on the 12th of June, Sean called her from a gas station landline and said, "I killed my mother." Sean was released from the health facility on the 16th of June, and Sean later turned himself into police at just before 11 a.m. on Thursday the 29th of June. Sean was booked into the Miami-Dade County Jail on charges of second-degree murder, battery by strangulation and aggravated battery. He remains held without bond. Authorities said that at the time Sean was taken into custody, he was already in probation for domestic and aggravated battery for a separate incident. The investigation into the matter continues. Authorities are investigating after a 34-year-old man was fatally shot during an altercation. At just before 1 a.m. on Thursday the 29th of June, police responded to a home in the 200 block of South Minnesota Avenue in Wichita, Kansas on reports of a disturbance. When officers arrived, they found Nicholas Hardcastle critically injured inside the premises with a gunshot wound, and the shooter was still at the scene. Nicholas was rushed to a local hospital but died a short time later. Wichita Police Department said that 2 friends who were both armed got into a verbal dispute, which led to a physical altercation and a shot was fired. Police have indicated that alcohol was involved. During questioning, investigators said that a person admitted to the shooting but claimed self-defense. Authorities have not released the shooter's name or indicated what the argument was about. Police are still investigating the matter and will present the case to the District Attorney's Office to determine whether charges will be filed. A 32-year-old man is behind bars after police stopped an attempted murder-suicide of the man and his son. On the 23rd of June, authorities responded to a home in the 9800 block of Copperhead Lane in McKinney, Texas, near Black Bear Drive, after police said that Kendall Thigpeg Watsons made threats to hang himself and his 8-year-old son. When officers arrived, they found Kendall and the boy hanging from a staircase baluster. The officers immediately cut the rope and provided medical attention to the father and son, before transporting them to a local hospital. The boy was later released. Kendall was arrested and charged with attempted capital murder, and is held at the Collin County Jail with his bail set at $300,000. Authorities are investigating after a 32-year-old man was found fatally shot. At around 1:35 a.m. on Friday the 30th of June, authorities responded to the 1000 block of Quebec Place in the Petworth neighbourhood of Washington, D.C. on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a victim unresponsive with gunshot wounds to the upper body. The man was pronounced dead at the scene. He was identified as Timmy Roberts. No suspects or motives have been identified, as investigation into the matter continues. A 20-year-old man is behind bars after he fatally ran over a 73-year-old woman with a forklift before stealing a car. At 12:40 a.m. on Sunday the 2nd of July, authorities initially responded to a Lowe's improvement store at 2525 Crane Highway in Waldorf, Maryland, on a report of a burglar in progress. According to witnesses, the suspect, later identified as Bryce Caleb Timothy Brown, broke into the business, stole a forklift and fled the scene by ramming through the rear gates. Officers canvassed the area and later found a forklift in the parking lot of a nearby the Home Depot store, less than half a mile down the road at 12050 Jefferson Farm Place. However, the suspect was nowhere to be found. Officers then found a deceased female underneath the forklift. The victim was identified as Gloristine Pinkney. During the investigation, detectives determined that Gloristine was asleep in a dark copper-coloured 2019 Ford Fusion in the Home Depot store parking lot when Bryce crashed the forklift into the side of the vehicle. Gloristine then got out of a car and began to run away, but Bryce followed her in the forklift, ran her over before fleeing the scene in her car. Authorities believe that Gloristine was living in the car, and that Bryce and Gloristine did not know each other when she was killed. Later that evening, Gloristine's car was found near Bryce's home with damage to the passenger side and a missing side mirror. Bryce was arrested that night and charged with first-degree and second-degree murder, assault, theft and other related charges. He's held at the Charles County Detention Centre without bond. A babysitter was arrested after 3 children in her care became unconscious after she introduced them to snorting pills at her residence. A babysitter identified as 24-year-old Deanna Nicole Bird reportedly offered pills to the children, a 15-year-old girl and 2 boys aged 8 and 9, and demonstrated how to snort them using a rolled-up ramen noodle cup lid. At around 5:20 p.m. on Wednesday the 28th of June, Jessica Nervig arrived at Deanna's residence in the 100 block of Althouse Avenue in Evansville, Indiana to collect her 3 children, and noticed Deanna seemed impaired on the porch. Worried that she couldn't find her children, Jessica rushed inside the home and found her daughter unconscious on Deanna's bed, and her sons unresponsive on the couch. Jessica called 911 requesting medical assistance for her 3 children. When Jessica confronted Deanna and told her that she called 911, Deanna said she wasn't going to jail for no kids. Medics arrived and revived the 2 boys. When they regained consciousness, both kids were stumbling and falling when trying to get into the ambulance. The girl was unconscious when she was put into an ambulance. One of the young children told an officer that Deanna, their babysitter, had given them some of her pills. Upon regaining consciousness in the hospital, the girl told investigators that Deanna had provided them with pills, including Adderall, Klonopin and Lyrica just after midnight. She said Deanna showed them how to break open the orange pill capsules and make lines with them to snort. The girl said that Deanna showed them how to snort the pills using a rolled-up ramen noodle cup lid. She said her and her brothers took about 3 to 4 of each of the 3 different pills Deanna had given them. While interviewed by police, Deanna claimed that the 3 children, one of them who she refers to as an asshole, must have gotten into her pills on their own, saying that she never gave them anything. She added that the children liked to snoop when given free rein at her home. She also denied that either of the 2 young children were ever unconscious. At Deanna's home, detectives found a prescription bottle of Adderall and Klonopin. While she was being booked into the Vanderburgh County Jail, police found a half-filled prescription bottle for Lyrica in Deanna's purse, which had orange capsules that matched the broken ones found at the home. The pills and capsules were reportedly prescribed to individuals other than herself. Deanna has been charged with 3 counts of neglect of a dependent resulting in serious bodily injury, as well as drug possession and theft. Her bail's been set at $20,000, and she's been instructed not to have any contact with the 3 children. The investigation into the matter continues. 21-year-old Kendaris Jaquan Cole is behind bars for fatally shooting 18-year-old Madresha Stovall over the weekend. At 12:43 p.m. on Saturday the 1st of July, authorities responded to the 2200 block of Eastern Boulevard in Montgomery, Alabama, on reports that a woman had been shot in a vehicle. When officers arrived, they found the woman unresponsive with a gunshot wound and was pronounced dead at the scene. Upon further investigation, authorities identified Kendaris as a suspect in the shooting. At 4:15 p.m. on Monday the 3rd of July, Kendaris was arrested and booked into the Montgomery County Detention Centre without bond. He's charged with capital murder because Madresha was in a vehicle when she was fatally shot from the outside. A motive in the shooting has not been released. Kendaris was already out of jail and bond on a separate incident of discharging a firearm into an occupied building less than 2 miles down the road from where Madresha was shot. He was arrested on the 16th of June for firing shots into the Murphy USA gas station on Eastern Boulevard, while employees and patrons were inside. The investigation into the matter continues. A homeless man is behind bars after he spat on a police officer and headbutted another after stealing gas station sandwiches. At around 8:20 a.m. on Sunday the 2nd of July, authorities responded to the Shell gas station at 1492 South Dixie Highway in Coral Gables, Florida, to a call about a man who had stolen several items from the convenience store and battered an employee. Investigators learnt that 31-year-old Andreas Ramanegrin had eaten 2 sandwiches, totaling $20 inside the store before leaving without paying for them. Police said he returned a short time later and grabbed an energy drink before getting into an argument with a store employee. During the confrontation, Andreas slammed the drink down and punched the victim in the back of the head. After leaving the store again, he was quickly stopped by an officer and was taken into custody. While placing Andreas into the back of the patrol car, he spat on one of the officers 3 times and elbowed him twice before headbutting another officer. Andreas is charged with battery on a police officer, battery, theft and probation violation. He's held at the Turner Guilford Knight Correctional Centre on a $12,000 bond. Authorities are investigating after a pregnant woman was fatally shot. At around 11:50 p.m. on Thursday, the 6th of July, authorities received reports of a shooting at an apartment complex at Kings Run Court in Cincinnati, Ohio. When police responded to the scene, they found a woman who had been shot after several bullets had been fired through the bedroom window of her home. She was taken to University of Cincinnati Medical Center, where she died from her injuries. The Hamilton County coroner identified the victim as 26-year-old Isis Roseman, who was pregnant at the time. The shooting's been investigated as a homicide. It's unclear if the shooting was a random or targeted attack, as about 24 gunshots were fired into a building half a block away in a drive-by shooting about 5 hours later. However, no one was injured in that attack. No arrests or suspect information has been released, as the investigation into the matter continues. 28-year-old Imogen Sayed is behind bars for fatally attacking 22-year-old Atbin Razavin Rubadan with a machete. At around 4:15 p.m. on Thursday, the 6th of July, authorities responded to a 7-Eleven convenience store along Mulligan Way in Lansdale, Western Australia, and reports of an unconscious man. When first responders arrived, they met with blood throughout the parking lot and found Atbin unresponsive at the doorway of the store with multiple stab wounds. Medics attempted life-saving measures, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities said that Atbin was running errands and he stopped by the gas station to refuel his car. While there, Atbin became involved in an altercation with another man before a third man approached and struck him with a machete in the back, chest and neck. The terrifying ordeal occurred in front of shocked customers and staff at the store. Police spoke with witnesses, reviewed surveillance footage and gathered evidence at the scene, and identified Imogen as a suspect. Investigators said that CCTV captured a black vehicle driving into the gas station, then a man exiting the vehicle and speeding off just 80 seconds later. Within hours, the tactical response team raided a home in Wicklow Circle in nearby Darch and took Imogen into custody. He is charged with murder and is held without bail. 31-year-old Christian Balls behind bars for fatally shooting 31-year-old Stephanie Ellico. At around 7:10 a.m. on Friday, the 7th of July, authorities responded to a trailer park at 18026 Cave Creek Road in Phoenix, Arizona, on report of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found Stephanie in a critical condition suffering from a gunshot wound. Medics transported her to a local hospital with life-threatening injuries, but died a short time later. Authorities identified Christian as a suspect, and he was taken into custody. Investigators said that an altercation between Stephanie and Christian occurred that involved Christian getting cut with a blade. Several minutes later, he pulled out a gun and shot her. It's unclear what the fight was about. Christian was booked into the Maricopa County Jail on weapons charges related to him being a prohibited possessor. Additional charges related to the homicide investigation will be submitted to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for review. The investigation into the matter continues. 3 teens have been arrested for murdering a man after egging his house. 18-year-old Sydney Morgan and Jeremy Munson and 19-year-old Mackenzie Davenport were each charged with malice murder, battery and criminal trespass. Sydney and Jeremy were also charged with aggravated assault and possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime. On Monday the 3rd of July, authorities responded to a report of a man down in a roadway in the 100 block of Dobbins Mill Road in Spalding County, Georgia. When deputies arrived at the scene, they located a deceased man who had been shot. He had no identification on him, but he was identified by a fingerprint scan as 22-year-old Jonathan Gilbert, who also went by the name of Tyler Lane. Detectives gathered evidence and sought witnesses. Investigators were able to locate a witness that provided them with information related to the shooting, and through that they were able to create a direct link between the victim and the suspects. Using that information, investigators began a search for the suspects, located a cell phone number that was tied to one of them, and tracked it to a location in Henry County. Authorities searched the area until they located a vehicle at a residence, and were able to obtain a search warrant for the vehicle on the premises. During the search, they retrieved the car that was believed to have been used in the crime, along with the gun that was suspected to be used to shoot Jonathan. As the investigation progressed, more suspects were developed and eventually arrested. The Spalding County Sheriff's Office said it appears that there was an ongoing lovers' quarrel, and the suspects decided to go to Jonathan's residence along Dobbins Mill Road and vandalise it by egging it. When Jonathan saw what they were doing to his home, he came out of the house unarmed to confront them. The suspects ran back to the car, and as Jonathan approached them, Sydney, a backseat passenger in the car, produced a firearm and shot him multiple times. The trio then fled the scene, leaving Jonathan dead in the middle of the road. Spalding County Sheriff Darryl Dick said that even though Sydney was accused of pulling the trigger, all 3 suspects will be held accountable because they plotted and planned together and travelled to the location with the intent to commit a crime that led up to the murder together, though all just as culpable as if they each pulled the trigger themselves. They went to Edgar House. The victim confronted them while they were doing it. He lost his life, and they drove off and left his body in the middle of the road. Together they bought that ticket. Now together they can ride that ride, he said. The investigation into the matter continues. 29-year-old Morningstar Geordie is facing charges in connection to the death of 63-year-old Nigassi Balti after his body was found in his apartment. On the morning of Wednesday the 5th of July, a caseworker from the Southeastern Behavioural Health, a mental health agency, went to a residence at 608 North Cliff Avenue in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, to visit Nigassi after he missed an appointment. After noticing a fetid stench emanating from the apartment, police were notified. He then entered the building. Inside the unit, officers found a black garment bag in the bedroom with Nigassi's decomposing body sticking out. A rug underneath the bag appeared to be soaked in dried blood, and flies and maggots surrounded the body. Investigators believe Nigassi had been dead for about a week. Preliminary autopsy results indicated that he died of a homicide, and Morningstar was identified as a suspect. Morningstar had already been in police custody since Tuesday the 4th of July for a disorderly conduct violation, assault by bodily fluids after spitting in an officer's face, and threatening to kill an officer. On the 6th of July, prosecutors charged Morningstar with 2 counts of aggravated assault in connection with Nigassi's death, but said further charges could be coming. While questioned by detectives, Morningstar admitted to assaulting Nigassi 6 days prior to the discovery of his body. He said as the two of them fought, he hit Nigassi with wood, stomped on his head multiple times and kicked him in the jaw until he became unconscious. He then said he did not know how he ended up dying. Morningstar claimed that Nigassi had assaulted his girlfriend, which is what prompted the fight. He told investigators that Nigassi threw objects such as a fan and utensils and other things at him. He said, "I grabbed a piece of wood and I smacked him in the back of the head with the wood. He hit the ground and I assaulted him again," he said. At Nigassi's apartment, police seized multiple items during the search, including a knife with an antler handle, a broken fan and cords. Investigators also found a shoe print that did not match any of the shoes in the apartment. Police then searched Morningstar's residence and found jeans with blood on them and shoes that matched the shoe print at Nigassi's apartment. Morningstar told them that someone other than him entered the apartment and tried to clean it up. A witness told police that Morningstar was seen near the apartment within the past week. Morningstar was previously charged with multiple cases of aggravated assaults, domestic violence and robbery. He's held at the Minnehaha County Jail on a $50,000 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A Tennessee woman is behind bars this week after biting a 4-month-old child multiple times. Authorities said that David and Jessica Ashley called police after concerns about their daughter Lisa Ashley. They explained to officers that Lisa admitted to them that she bit her infant daughter. They showed an officer at the scene pictures they had taken of the baby, which showed the bite marks on its knee, face and bottom. They said Lisa and her daughter no longer lived with them, but was living with a friend at an apartment off Hickson Pike in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Police then made their way to Lisa's apartment. Officers spoke with Lisa at the door and eventually asked to see her baby. When Lisa agreed, officers noticed a bruise on the baby's face and on its bottom. At first, Lisa denied any knowledge of the baby's injuries, but later admitted that she did bite her daughter and felt instant guilt about it. She then told officers that she suffered from postpartum depression. Lisa was arrested and charged with child abuse and child neglect and is held at the Hamilton County Jail. The investigation into the matter continues. 2 thieves are wanted by police after fatally shooting a 35-year-old man during a hold-up of a store over the weekend. At around 8 p.m. on Saturday the 8th of July, authorities responded to the Manor Deli and Convenience Store at 444 Manor Road in Castleton Corners, Staten Island, New York, on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found Bassem Khatib inside the store with a gunshot wound to his chest. Medics rushed him to hospital, but is unable to be saved. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage from inside the deli, which showed 2 men in ski masks sprint out the door following the shooting, ending to a maroon Jeep Cherokee, which sped out of the parking lot. The Jeep was last seen fleeing on the New Jersey-bound side of Staten Island Expressway. Authorities said that before the fatal shooting, the 2 suspects tried to enter a smoke shop at 1949 Richmond Avenue. One of the suspects knocked on the door and tried to open it as he peered through the glass window. After the men failed to get in, they walked away and headed to Bassam's store next. The two businesses are less than 4 miles apart. The two men remain on the run as the investigation into the matter continues. A 34-year-old man found dead inside a chest freezer of an empty home last month was on the run from authorities and likely jumped into the icebox to evade police, authorities said. On the 26th of June, Brandon Lee Bushman's body was recovered from the freezer in the basement of a vacant residence at 304 4th Avenue North in Biwabik, Minnesota. There was an outstanding warrant for Brandon's arrest, and police suspected he jumped into the freezer of his own accord to hide, but became trapped inside. An autopsy has since shown no evidence of trauma or injury to his body, and a toxicology report is pending. Investigators said the chest freezer is an older model with a latching mechanism on the outside of the freezer, and when closed, it's not capable of being pushed open from the inside. The freezer was not plugged into electricity because utilities in the home had been turned off since April of 2022, and the house had been vacant since February this year. Several witnesses familiar with Brandon's situation told investigators he was last seen running from the upstairs area of the house due to the possible police presence near the premises. Gilbert Police Lieutenant Chelsea Tricano said that the reports from the individuals were very unclear as to exactly when it was that Brandon had fled. They're continuing to work on some additional investigation to narrow if that means it was this year or last year, and will provide that information at a later date once it's narrowed to a better timeline. Police did not say what crime Brandon was wanted for. The investigation into the matter continues. Police are investigating after a 41-year-old man was found fatally shot. At around 9:45 p.m. on Saturday the 8th of July, authorities responded to the 1600 block of North Parkside Avenue in the Austin neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois, and reports of a person down. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a man with a gunshot wound to the abdomen and back. The victim was unable to communicate as he was transported to the Loyola Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office identified the victim as Anthony Jackson. No arrests have been made to date, and the motive in the attack remains unclear as the investigation into the matter continues. 27-year-old Raul Miller Jr. is behind bars for attacking a nurse with a tie iron. At around 3 a.m. on Thursday the 6th of July, a nurse who was on a break near a parking lot at the HCA Fort Walton Destin Hospital on Marwalt Drive in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, was ambushed by Raul. He beat her over the head 5 or 6 times with a tie iron, and the nurse managed to fight him off before calling for help. The nurse suffered critical lacerations and swelling to her head. The victim was able to describe her attacker to investigators, who found him riding a bike nearby. When deputies stopped Raul, they discovered a bloody tie iron in his bicycle basket, as well as a fresh bloodstain on his shirt. He was arrested and charged with attempted murder, and he's held at the Okaloosa County Jail on a $1 million bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 35-year-old Daniel Birch is behind bars after a woman's body was found in a lake. At around 2:30 p.m. on Thursday the 6th of July, a driver on Fairway Drive in Grapevine, Texas reported to police that a passenger thought he saw a body floating near the spillway of a dam in Grapevine Lake. Officers responded to the scene and recovered a woman's body and found 2 gunshot wounds to her head and 2 more to her chest. The next day, authorities identified the victim as Jennifer Holmes of Louisville. Upon further investigation, detectives identified Daniel Birch as a suspect. The two reportedly lived together and were close friends. She'd been staying with Daniel because she lost her home in a fire. During an interview, Daniel told detectives that Jennifer came home at around 11 p.m. on the 4th of July after drinking down the street with neighbours. He said Jennifer was causing problems, so in the early morning hours of the 5th of July, he drove her to Grapevine Lake in hopes of calming her down, but instead she started screaming and throwing things inside the car. He then pulled over on Fairway Drive, and Jennifer jumped out of the car. He said he also got out of the car while holding his handgun. He claimed that Jennifer shoved him, so he shot her multiple times before dumping her body in the lake. A witness reported hearing gunshots at just after 2:30 a.m. that morning in the Grapevine Lake spillway area. Police reportedly found several bullet casings around the lake which matched the caliber of Daniel's handgun. The gun, along with Jennifer's cell phone, was found in Daniel's car. Daniel was arrested and charged with murder, and he remains held at the Tarrant County Jail on a $150,000 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A man is wanted by police after assaulting a 27-year-old female aged care worker. The incident occurred at around 7:30 a.m. on Thursday the 6th of July at a retirement village along Wells Road in Aspendale Gardens, Melbourne, Australia. Police said they believe the man entered the building looking for items to steal. He walked upstairs to a bin room where the woman followed him. He then grabbed her by her upper arms before punching her several times to the head and upper body area. The man then fled the facility, leaving the woman traumatized with bruises and scratches. Police have released CCTV footage and photos of the man, who's perceived to be Asian in appearance and aged in his late 20s. Police have urged anyone with information to contact Crime Stoppers. A 34-year-old woman is behind bars after accidentally shooting her 10-year-old son. At 11:21 p.m. on Thursday the 6th of July, authorities responded to Grady Memorial Hospital in Clayton County, Georgia on report of a person shot. Medical staff told police Brittany Parks and her boyfriend brought a child to the hospital and the victim had died. Brittany told officers she was unloading a handgun when it accidentally discharged. She said that the bullet pierced through the wall and into another room and hit her son. Through multiple interviews, Brittany and her boyfriend gave different accounts of what led up to the shooting. Police then developed probable cause against Brittany based on her and her boyfriend's statements. On the 7th of July, officers arrested Brittany and booked her into the Clayton County Jail on charges of involuntary manslaughter, second-degree cruelty to children and reckless conduct. The investigation into the matter continues. A 47-year-old man is behind bars in connection to the death of his 49-year-old wife last month. At 5:41 a.m. on Sunday the 25th of June, a passerby reported seeing a deceased woman laying in the roadway near the intersection of Legend Road and Killing Road west of Highway 371 in Fort Ripley, Minnesota. Authorities responded to the scene and found the body. The next day, the investigators identified the victim as Angela Marie McLennan and determined that she was fatally struck by a vehicle. Police said that after spending 2 weeks investigating and piecing the events leading up to Angela's death, authorities identified the victim's husband, Tony James McLennan, as a suspect. Angela and Tony lived together in their Fort Ripley home. At 8:30 p.m. on Monday the 10th of July, Tony was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and criminal vehicular homicide. He remains held at the Crow Wing County Jail. The motive of the killing is unclear as the investigation into the matter continues. A middle school principal was arrested in a sting operation after he allegedly attempted to meet up with a 16-year-old girl for sex in a remote area. 55-year-old Derek Erickson started communicating on Snapchat with a 16-year-old student and allegedly made statements and eventually overt actions of his intentions to engage in sex with the minor. He allegedly posed as a younger adult and then used his position as a Johnson City middle school principal in New York, along with school district database information, to convince the 16-year-old who he really was. Daniel and the teen had allegedly been speaking for about a week prior to their scheduled meet-up on the 7th of July. He allegedly made multiple attempts to meet with her, including going to her home. The teen, however, did not leave her house to meet him. On the 5th of July, the Broome County Sheriff's Office learned about Daniel's alleged intentions to see the teen, and after that point there was no further risk of harm to the juvenile female at any time. Detectives went to the location where Daniel and the teen were supposed to meet and arrested him on charges of luring a child and attempted rape. He reportedly brought a box of condoms, a McDonald's Grimace shake and chicken nuggets. Daniel's been held at the Broome County Jail without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. A 29-year-old Texas woman is behind bars after she left her 2-year-old son home alone while she went out clubbing. The Odessa Police Department said a relative called 911 shortly after midnight on Saturday the 8th of July to say she found the boy running around his living room in an apparently empty home. When an officer arrived at the home along Lakeside Drive in Odessa, Texas, he found the main door unlocked and no one answered when he announced himself. The officer stated that the child walked over to him and he grabbed him. A relative who called 911 told the officer that the boy's mother, Gretel Suarez Negrin, might be at Club 305, and other officers found a vehicle in the back parking lot. Another relative told officers it was Gretel's custody weekend, and she should be the only one at the residence. The officer noted that the boy could have wandered into the busy roadway or the lake, which was only within feet of his home. Gretel was arrested and charged with abandoning and endangering a child. She remains held at the Ector County Jail on a $30,000 bond. If convicted, Gretel faces up to 20 years behind bars. A 38-year-old Pikeville, Tennessee man is behind bars for fatally shooting a 24-year-old woman during a domestic dispute. At around 8 a.m. on Monday the 10th of July, authorities responded to a home along Cherry Road in Sparta, Tennessee, and reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the property, they found Clayton Matthew Watson sitting on the front porch with his 8-year-old son, telling him that he'll be going away to prison for a long time. At that time, the child's mother ran out to say that Clayton had shot and killed Dara Jade Baker inside the house, and Clayton was taken into custody. When officers entered the home, they found Dara's unresponsive body with gunshot wounds and a gun located nearby. The relationship between Clayton and Dara has not been disclosed, and it's unclear what events led up to the shooting. Clayton is charged with first-degree murder, and he's held at the White County Jail on a $1 million bail. The investigation into the matter continues. A 20-year-old man is behind bars for fatally stabbing his uncle. At just before 2 p.m. on Sunday the 9th of July, authorities were called to the Southern Regional Medical Center in Riverdale, Georgia, in reference to a man who had been stabbed. Detectives learnt that the stabbing occurred at a home less than a mile away, in the 6700 block of Fellawater Circle. When officers arrived at the residence, they found the suspect, identified as Jabaris McCrary, sitting on the front porch with several injuries from a knife. He reportedly stabbed his uncle when a verbal argument turned physical. The victim, whose age and identity were not released, was rushed to the hospital by other family members. He later died due to his injuries. Jabaris was arrested and charged with felony murder and possession of a knife during the commission of a crime. The investigation into the matter continues. 27-year-old Suad Muhammad Ali is behind bars after kneeling on a daughter and fatally suffocating her. At around 9:40 p.m. on Monday the 10th of July, authorities responded to a townhouse at 345 River Road in Pelican Rapids, Minnesota, on a report of a 3-year-old girl not breathing. When officers arrived at the home, they found Suad on the couch and a daughter lying on the living room floor unresponsive with no pulse. Suad told officers she placed a hand over the girl's mouth, shook and punched her daughter in the throat, and strangled her to get her to stop crying. She said she laid on top of the child when she was face down to keep her quiet. She also told investigators that she tried to stab her daughter early in the night with a knife, but that she didn't harm the girl. Investigators located the knife on the arm of a couch in the living room. During CPR, officers said the child vomited and turned her head to the side, adding that while CPR was given, Suad smiled the entire time. The girl was taken to Essentia St. Mary's in Detroit Lakes, where she passed away. During an autopsy, the medical examiner found a bite on the child's left cheek, as well as injuries to her head and brain. The official cause of death has not yet been released. Suad was arrested and charged with second and third degree murder and is held at the Ottertail County Jail. Suad made a first court appearance via Zoom on the 12th of July, where a bond was set at $70,000. Her next court date is set for the 24th of July. The investigation into the matter continues. A 37-year-old woman was fatally shot during a road rage incident. At 9:18 p.m. on Monday the 10th of July, authorities responded to the 1400 block of West Hurst Boulevard in Hurst, Texas on a report that a female had been shot. Upon arrival, officers found Paola Nunez Linares unresponsive in the passenger side of the minivan with a gunshot wound to her head. Paola was transported to a local hospital, but was pronounced dead on arrival. Paola's husband Zane Jones said that he's driving their minivan northbound on East Loop 820 when they encountered a violent driver. He said as he was passing one car, another car sped up behind him. He said as he was completing the pass, and when he got into the other lane, the car accelerated until it came level next to him. The car then started veering aggressively into his lane, trying to push him off the road. Zane said that he then flipped off the other driver, something his wife has always warned him not to do. The driver then pulled out a gun and fired at least 3 shots into the vehicle, striking Paolo in the back of the head. Zane said he quickly pulled off the highway and called 911, but by the time paramedics arrived it was too late. Paola was originally from Guatemala and moved to the US to marry Zane last year. Zane said he wants his wife to be remembered as someone who's full of love. She's a most innocent victim, he said. She's just not some woman who got killed on the highway. She's exceptional in every way. Police said they're still searching for the suspect, who was in a small, older, darker looking car. The investigation into the matter continues. 36-year-old Tracy Renee Puskett is behind bars this week in connection to the death of her 17-month-old son Jemai Puskett early this year. At around 7:15 a.m. on the 27th of April, authorities responded to a residence at 13520 Southeast 42nd Avenue in Summerfield, Florida on report of an unresponsive toddler. When first responders entered the living room of the home, they found Jemai on the floor in a critical condition with signs of physical abuse. He had bruises all over his body and significant trauma to his head. Medics applied life-saving measures on Jemai before rushing him to the Advent Health Bellevue emergency room. He was subsequently transferred to the UF Health Shands Hospital for more specialised treatment. While interviewed, Tracy told detectives that around 8:30 p.m. the previous night, Jemai was eating dinner in the dining area when he began to have a fit. She said that he banged his head on the floor while in a face-down position, so she moved him to a safe spot and held him down into a lock position. She said that around 10 p.m, he became stiff as a board, at which point she put him into bed. She claimed that when she woke up the following morning at 7 a.m, Jemai's lips were blue and his breathing was shallow, so she had her mother call 911. Over the course of several interviews, Tracy's version of the night events continued to change, giving detectives different accounts of how Jemai hit his head. Some of the other reasons included Jemai being hit over the head with a plastic hollow toy by his 4-year-old sister, Jemai falling off the bed, or falling in the bathtub. When questioned as to why she did not call 911 when the child became stiff the previous night, she said that she did not want the Department of Children and Families to come and take her children away again. On the 29th of April, Jemai died from his injuries. On the 7th of July, autopsy results indicate that Jemai had died from complications of a skull fracture, subdural hemorrhage, and traumatic brain and spinal cord injury due to abusive head and neck trauma. Detectives determined that Jemai's injuries were too severe to be caused by any of Tracy's scenarios, and the manner of his death was ruled a homicide. On Monday the 10th of July, detectives located Tracy at her home. She was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and is held at the Marin County Jail without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 26-year-old Deshawn Smith-Therese and Rachel Alexander are behind bars after a 2-year-old girl died in their care. At 9:01 p.m. on Wednesday the 12th of July, authorities were called to the Quality Inn Hotel at 3112 South 79th Avenue in Tulsa, Oklahoma on report of a toddler in cardiac arrest. When first responders arrived, they entered the hotel room and found an unresponsive 2-year-old girl. They attempted life-saving measures on the little girl, but she was unable to be revived and was pronounced dead at the scene. An initial examination of the child showed likely signs of physical abuse. Investigators learned that Deshawn and Rachel traveled to Tulsa, Oklahoma from Little Rock, Arkansas, and took 2 girls with them, a 2- and a 3-year-old that belonged to a family member of one of the adults. They took the kids to Owassa, Oklahoma to panhandle around the Home Depot area and claimed to be out there from 4 to 8 p.m. Security footage shows the group arriving back at the hotel at around 8:25 p.m. When Deshawn removed the 2-year-old from the car, she was limp. Investigators said that Deshawn attempted CPR, then took the girl inside their room and called 911. The district attorney's office agreed there was probable cause to arrest Rachel for abuse and neglect, and Deshawn for neglect and permitting abuse. They've both been held at the Tulsa County Jail. The 3-year-old was taken into the Department of Human Services custody. The investigation into the matter continues. A 70-year-old man is behind bars after fatally shooting his 45-year-old wife. At 4:23 a.m. on Monday the 10th of July, authorities responded to a home in Temple, Georgia after Barry Black called 911 to report that he just shot his wife Brenda Bowman in the head. Responding deputies found Brenda's body in the couple's bedroom. Barry remained on scene and was arrested and charged with voluntary manslaughter and is held at the Carroll County Jail. The motive of the shooting is unclear as the investigation into the matter continues. 29-year-old Larry Pickens is behind bars for fatally shooting 43-year-old orthopedic surgeon Dr. Benjamin Mork. The incident occurred at around 2 p.m. on Tuesday the 11th of July inside an exam room of Campbell Clinic at 1458 West Poplar Avenue in Collierville, Tennessee. Police immediately responded to the clinic, where a witness told them that a patient was being treated by Benjamin when he removed a pistol and fired 3 rounds, killing the doctor before running out of the clinic. Police found Benjamin deceased with a gunshot wound to his neck, another in his chest and a third in his upper abdomen. Police said that the paperwork in the exam room confirmed the suspect was Larry Pickens. Within minutes of the shooting, officers located Larry near the entrance of the clinic with a backpack carrying a pistol with an empty chamber and 2 empty magazines. He was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and aggravated assault. His bond was set at $1.2 million. Police said that the disgruntled patient had been sending Benjamin threatening text messages a week prior to the shooting and waited hours for Benjamin before fatally shooting him. The investigation into the matter continues. Police were investigating after a 21-year-old woman was found fatally shot. At around 11:20 a.m. on Monday the 10th of July, authorities responded to a house on the 400 block of Union Grove Road in Camden, Alabama, on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found a deceased woman inside the premises. The woman's been identified as Alexis Thomas of Pineapple, Alabama. Her body's been sent to forensics for an autopsy. Police said they're continuing to investigate the matter and are hoping to make an arrest soon. The motive of the attack is unclear, and no further details have been provided on the case. A couple are behind bars after the 18-month-old daughter baked to death when the child was left in a hot car after a night of partying. Joel and Jasmine Rondon, both 33 of Winchester Estate Circle in Lakeland, Florida, went to a 4th of July celebration with 3 children under the age of 9 years old and did not return home until 3 a.m. on the 5th of July. Detectives said the couple drank alcohol and smoked marijuana while at the party, then returned home. They began to unload the car, and Jasmine told Joel to bring the young girl inside while she brought the other 2 children in. Joel told investigators that one of the car doors was open at the time. Joel brought stuff inside their home and went back outside, and he saw all 4 doors to the Hyundai Elantra closed and assumed Jasmine brought the child inside. Detectives said that Joel went back inside and went to bed beside his wife. Neither husband or wife asked each other if they brought the toddler inside, and they went to sleep. Joel then woke up at around 10 a.m. that morning and spent an hour getting ready for work. At around 11 a.m. he asked one of the kids to go check on the baby in the bedroom, but was told that the baby was not there. At that point, Joel began to search the house for the little girl. After searching the house for the toddler, Joel went out to the car parked in the driveway in the full heat of the sun and found his daughter unresponsive in the back of the car, still strapped to a car seat. The outdoor heat index was around 100 degrees Fahrenheit at the time and was expected to peak at around 112 degrees. Joel rushed inside to wake his wife up, and the couple took the toddler to the Lake Regional Health Medical Center. Despite all efforts by medical personnel to try to cool her body down, she could not be revived and was declared dead at 2:42 p.m. At the time, her internal body temperature was 104.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Hospital staff notified law enforcement, and they assumed the investigation. At around 7 p.m. that evening, Joel and Jasmine both submitted to drug screens by the Department of Children and Families. Joel and Jasmine both tested positive for marijuana and alcohol, whereas Joel also tested positive for meth. On Thursday, the 6th of July, an autopsy determined that the toddler's cause of death was hypothermia due to being left in the car, and the manner of death was deemed a homicide. Investigators said that Joel and Jasmine were remorseful and admitted to partying with drugs and alcohol. The couple were arrested and charged with aggravated manslaughter, and they remain held at the Polk County Jail. The couple's 2 surviving children are reportedly staying with relatives. Joel has been arrested 7 times since 2003 on charges including aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, possession of meth and resisting arrest. His most recent arrest was in February this year, when he was arrested on a warrant for carrying a concealed firearm, possession of meth and possession of drug paraphernalia. The investigation into the matter continues. A CVS pharmacy worker is accused of fatally stabbing a homeless shoplifter during a scuffle inside the store. The incident occurred at around 12:25 a.m. on Thursday the 6th of July, located at the intersection of Broadway and West 49th in New York City, New York. When 46-year-old Scotty Eno was stocking the freezer shelves of the store, he confronted 50-year-old Charles Bitto near the exit as he attempted to steal a Gatorade drink and a container of creamer. An argument ensued, which turned physical. Charles threw Scotty to the ground and repeatedly punched him in the head, when Scotty pulled out a knife from his pocket and stabbed Charles 8 times in the chest, piercing his heart and liver. Police were called to the scene for a reported robbery in progress, but the stabbing had already taken place when they arrived. Medics rushed Charles to the New York City Health and Hospital's Bellevue, but is unable to be saved after he bled to death. Scotty was found with a blood-soaked folding knife and brass knuckles on him. The knife was reportedly used for opening boxes in the store. Scotty told investigators, "I didn't stab Charles because he stole from the store, but stabbed him over punching me. Look at what he did to my face," he said. Scotty was taken into custody at the Mount Sinai West Hospital with contusions to his face before being jailed on charges of murder and criminal possession of a weapon. His bail's been set at $100,000. The investigation into the matter continues. 32-year-old Thais Faith Roscoe is behind bars for fatally shooting her 26-year-old boyfriend. At around 1:45 p.m. on Thursday the 6th of July, authorities responded to room 166 at Red Roof Inn at 26300 DeQuinda Road in Warren, Michigan, on report of a domestic incident. When officers arrived, they entered the motel room and found a deceased man inside with a gunshot wound. His name has not been disclosed. Thais, who remained on scene, told investigators that she and her boyfriend had an argument in their room where they were living together. She said that during the argument, he assaulted her, so he shot him in the chest at close range in self-defense. Thais is charged with second-degree murder and felony firearm. She's held at the Macomb County Jail on a $1 million bond, and upon release she must wear a GPS tether. A probable cause hearing is scheduled for the 18th of July. The investigation into the matter continues. An inmate who managed to escape from a prison in Osceola, Arkansas is back behind bars. At 1:30 p.m. on Friday the 7th of July, 32-year-old Joshua Harris was taking the trash out, and he ran from the Northeast Arkansas Community Correction Center. At 9:30 p.m. that evening, authorities found Joshua at a highway exit a few miles away. He was taken to the Division of Corrections for more secure housing. Joshua is serving a 5-year sentence on drug possession charges out of Independence County, and he now faces an escape charge.